call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with roll call. Lori, okay.
Stu Boyd.
Here.
Denise Chapman.
Here.
Amy Doran.
Here.
Dawn Kirk.
Here.
Barbara Cruz.
Here.
Alexandra Lessem. Nancy Rumpel.
Here.
She'll be here. She was gonna be a few minutes late. Yeah. All right, our first, pledge. Nancy, would you please lead us in the pledge? So out of routine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda for today, August 7th, 2024. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Thank you, Stu.
I'll second.
Thank you, Nancy. And then Laura, please call the roll.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Denise Chapman.
Aye.
Amy Doran.
Aye.
Dawn Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Alexandra Lessem. Nancy Rumpel.
Aye.
Thank you, Laura Lee. All right, we don't have any school visits tonight, any presentations, so we can move on to our discussion items, and we'll try to get back to the routine that we were using the last time we had our our study sessions, and the fact that we'll begin with somebody and work around and everybody can have an opportunity versus everybody shouting out. That will just help us. And our first item that we'll be discussing will be item 3.1, which is the first reading of the ACE3 Gender Support Guidelines. And I believe Schneider.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, Melissa Schneider, Assistant Superintendent of Learning Services. With me, I have Carrie Bartman, our Director of Assessment and Evaluation. Tonight, we actually have 4 exhibits, so we're going to do those all at once from the policy ACE. So exhibit E3, E4, E5, E6. They are very perfunctory changes. Carrie will go through those with you. They are to align with statutory requirements, and so we've updated our documents to be in compliance. So I will let Carrie tell you a little bit more.
Absolutely. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Schaefer. Carrie Bartman, Director of Assessment and Evaluation. So in front of you first, we'll start with ACE3. Our Strive Connection for all of these exhibits are under Focus Area 2 and Inclusive and Supportive Culture, and so just ensuring we are in compliance and offering a welcoming and safe environment for all learners, each learner in our district. And so it's really one slide that goes over updated items to make sure we are in compliance with both the state of Colorado as well as different statutes that have come through. And so we'll start first with ACE3. What you see in that is under the official records section, we had to change and update just a couple of pieces that designated the difference between what we keep in official records in a student's CUME file from what we can put with their assumed identity and the things that we can have there. And so you'll see that additional piece, as well as CHAS's website has changed, and so we needed to update that information for you as well in ACE3. Were there any questions to that one before I move to the next one?
It doesn't really change our procedure at all.
It doesn't change anything at all. It basically gave a better description of what we have in official records and what we can do with the students' assumed or preferred identity. That's correct.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay. In ACE4, the only change was the structure of the document, so we just made it more user-friendly and able to type in it, as well as added a signature box for participants to the meeting. You'll notice that in both ACE4 and ACE5, This is a common signature box for anyone in any sort of meeting that you attend, from having a READ plan meeting to an IEP meeting to what a meeting for talking through, this gender transition plan would be as well. So we just simply added the box to it for ACE 4 and ACE 5. Any questions on
Questions?
either of those?
Nancy?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, why can we not use this opportunity to make sure that parents are notified and included and not excluded? And if the answer is, and I'd like to know what law that is based on,
So Colorado statute states that this.
which statute?
I'm not gonna be able to cite the statute right now, but I certainly can get that to you because we have, from legal counsel, we do have
Okay.
that mentioned. But we are in compliance with the law in terms of, this is an attendance signature page. It's not a parent permission form.
Right. It is who attended the meeting, who was present during the meeting, and so if a parent is there for that meeting, they would sign that document as well.
Do any of these policies require the parent to be notified of the student wanting to change their preferred name or pronoun?
In ACE on 6, there is a parent signature on the next document if they are doing the request for name change
Or
form.
legal?
Mhm.
What if it's not legal?
That is, I am not the person to ask that, but you're welcome to.
I'll get you the statute.
Absolutely. Any other questions on that one? for
Anybody
ACE?
else have questions on it? Okay.
Then on ACE 6, this is the official identity change request form. And so what was added to this piece is the making sure that everyone is aware of what the student's legal full name and gender are, as well as what their assumed name and gender would be. The other piece that we added in that we've been seeing more of is the parent or guardian would check a box to allow us to release both sets of information, if there were 2 sets, to another district. So if a student leaves us and goes to Cooter, the things we're allowed at this point to send them would be anything in the CUME file. However, what we're noticing throughout the state of Colorado is when students have an assumed name change or an identity change, sometimes when parents are filling out an OLR or a request form, they're putting that student's assumed name versus their legal name. And what's happening is we're creating multiple accounts via the state of Colorado for that student. And so this will help us inter-district wise and as well as going to different districts, be able to send all of the right information. So the number is called a SACID number, so that we're not creating multiple SACID numbers for the same actual student. Any
Questions?
questions on that?
We're on, E6. Okay.
I can't remember which one of these it's on. I was trying to scroll to find. One of these had a red line change about the participation in sports, and I can't remember which one of these I saw.
That was ACE 3.
Okay.
Mhm.
My question is, what are we gonna do to protect the female students? And if I don't have the terminology right, bear with me. If there is a transgender female that wants to play, what are we putting in place to ensure the safety and protection of our female students? And when there's overnight trips, are we making sure parents understand what some of the accommodations might include, which would be a transgender female in the same ring with their daughter?
So I would defer a lot of things that you asked to Kevin Clark. However, I can tell you what we changed was nothing on the field trip or overnight portion of this document. What we changed on the side of the CHASA piece is we are in alignment with what CHASA bylaws are. And so because the website and pieces of that were out of date, we just updated that information because we follow CHASA guidelines for the state of Colorado.
Do we have to stay with CHASA?
I don't think that's a question for me.
Well, just for clarification, and Dr. Schender, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not changing any policies.
No.
These are all exhibits. So policies that we have currently are still intact. These are just exhibits. Exhibits are attachments to policies, forms, just examples, things that would be used to support the policy, but there are no policy changes in front of the board.
So everything that I've asked tonight, there's a policy regarding for it, is it all embedded in AC?
In our anti-discrimination policy, yes, it's anchored in AC. And the CHASA questions you've asked are anchored in the organization in which we fall under for our competing activities in athletics.
And the
In the
questions that you
policies.
ask, we'll get you the answers to. So even though they fall, these are exhibits, but staff will be able to provide answers to your questions.
Okay.
And the entire board.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you. All right, our next item, we've done all of 3.1 through 3.4, so we'll move to 3.5, which is supplemental budget update. Hi, Gordon.
Good evening, late afternoon, however you choose to refer to it. Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board. I'm Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. The item being brought before you for your edification would then return at the next meeting, in the business meeting, for approval, which is a supplemental budget adjustment for the 2023-24 fiscal year. The typical process, as you've heard me say repeatedly, is we develop the budget from typically mid-December of the prior year until June. We ask board for an adopted budget in June for the next fiscal year. We have the ability to come back in January and make any amended budget adjustments that there might be. Those are typically true-ups from the prior year beginning fund balances that we've estimated at the time of the original budget. We also have October count data, so we have an actual student count rather than an estimated student count. And then the per pupil revenue amount from the state of Colorado is solidified versus the estimate that we've used. That takes place in January. From January until the annual report is prepared, the audit, we have the ability to come back and ask the board for consideration of a supplemental budget. And that's what this document is that you have in front of you. Tonight there are 4 items that I'd like to bring to the board's attention that as we've started wrapping up the 23-24 fiscal year have come to light. A lot of these are just compliance issues to make sure that we have adequately budgeted and appropriated expenditures and moved dollars from one fund to another in one case. So first is the general fund, Fund 10. A transfer acts the same as an expenditure for the general fund. Move $1.5 million to capital projects, which is Fund 43. So that transfer acts as an expenditure in the general fund and revenue, pseudo revenue in capital projects fund. These items were previously approved by the board. This solidifies or confirms those through a resolution that would be part of the documents the board would be asked to approve at the next meeting. Those items were of the fund balance. They came from fund balance in the general fund, which came from outperformance versus budget in a prior year, I believe the 21-22 year. When there was about $6.3 million of excess funds that were put in. Some of those funds were expended for salaries and benefits. The others were items that you see listed here to address repairs associated with the Office of Civil Rights or OCR audit findings. Those were largely parking lot related, facility related, bleachers at Ray Pat, those types of things. There were the Thompson Valley High School auditorium and building repairs that the board will recall had to be done, and the purchase of an activity bus for each of our comprehensive high schools so they could then transport some of their sports teams that way. Those are the items that are in the first item. The second item is Student Activities Fund, Fund 23. This is where a lot of the fundraising for all the various programs in the district reside. And we estimate what those expenditures are going to be. Sometimes there's a difference. There's more expended than what's anticipated in 1 year. And if it's not expended, it carries over to the next year and is available for expenditure. So those funds never go away. It's just the year when the expenditures take place. So this was about a $100,000 item where there was that was associated with the timing of the use of those, the expenditure of those various fundraising items. The next item is state and local grants, Fund 28. The proposed budget adjustment is expenditures, increasing the expenditures by $1.7 million. This is primarily associated with BEST grants that the district did not anticipate at the time of the adopted budget, that the district was able to secure during the year. Again, with the board's pre-approval on those, certainly the board was aware of applying for those grants, but we hadn't anticipated receiving those, so we hadn't budgeted those dollars. So that's what this item is. And the last item is very slight at $16,000. When you put all the budgets together, a very insignificant amount, but yet a desire from the accounting department to stay in compliance with statute of how we have to report these. It's in the bond redemption fund, which is the fund where we collect property tax dollars. A custodian collects those dollars. UMB Bank is our financial custodian in this case. There were about $16,000 in additional fees that they charged this year. They then pay all of the bondholders for the outstanding debt that the district maintains, so they make those principal and interest payments. So a slight increase there. Those are the 4 items that are brought before the board tonight for your consideration for adoption at the next business meeting, associated with the 23-24 fiscal year.
Questions? We'll start with Stu.
Yeah, Gordon, I do have a question about the state and local grants, Fund 28. Give me an example of an expenditure that would be associated with the awarding of a grant.
It's not the awarding of the grant. It is the awarding of the grant. It's any expenditure that we have. So if we received a grant for $500,000, that was to be used for, I might look at Mr. Piccone to offer
Roofing.
Exterior doors.
roofing projects. So the expenditure of that $500,000, it's not to secure the grant, it's the actual expenditure of that grant.
Okay. I asked you for an example and you gave me an example. Thank you.
Mr. Piccone did,
Well.
actually.
We're all one team.
You guys are a
Dot
team.
every I in team.
Thank you to all of you who participated in the answer.
Hopefully we speak as one.
Okay.
Any questions?
Nothing.
Nancy?
I've been through the budget so much.
Yeah, I know.
with-
Well, I thought this might be new. All right, thank you, Gordon.
Want to make, Amy, do you have anything?
Oh, Amy, I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay. You might have to just remind me, or Dr. Schaefer will.
You're good.
Okay. All right. Then the next item that's listed is the Board of Education agenda items that are supplemental that we just constantly see each time. The standard action ones. So there's the personnel and the expenditures over $50,000, and I'm sure there will be more as we get closer to the meeting. in a couple weeks. All right, so our next item, I believe, is ASB update.
Yep. I'm gonna move down here because I need to see everybody, because you're gonna be raising your hands for me. Hopefully you had a chance to look at this in its digital form that Laura Lee sent out earlier today. If you didn't, it's exactly the same as the form that she sent out. Do we need to allow a couple of minutes for anybody to read this before we start talking about the individual items?
Please, just a few minutes.
Okay.
To refresh.
All right.
And I know Alexandra's been working, so he knows whether she's had a chance, and so
Okay.
give us just a minute. Stu, did all of these that are on here, that, were any of them left as the original statement, or were they all edits and rewrites?
Where it says original statement is what the original statement
I know.
said.
But then one or two people then added revisions? Is that what that
Correct.
is?
Correct.
Okay,
Some of the revisions are subtle, some of them are not.
okay.
Also, for the benefit of the audience as you're reading, when we met on Monday, all of these items were actually approved to be part of our first legislative platform. But we didn't have time at our meeting on Monday to actually finish working through the wording on them. And so the board is now reading the original statements, the revisions, and in the case of item number 9, there were 3 revisions suggested. And we will then choose, we'll then vote, basically. We're not voting on whether to include the statement or not, because that was already done on Monday. We're now deciding what the wording is of the various statements. Are we good, or do you still need a minute? Still need a minute? Okay.
Just a little bit.
Okay. If you're not quite finished, you can continue reading maybe the last couple or 3 while we get started with this. Since we already voted on Monday to include the statement, and you'll recall the decision was that 5 people needed to agree that a statement was included. Since now we're just voting on the wording, I'm assuming that a majority vote should be enough, because we've already voted to include the statement. Are we in agreement on that?
It's fine.
Okay, yes? All right. The only one that we won't be able to do a majority vote on is number 9, because there are 4 different choices. So it seems to make sense to me that whichever one of the number 9 gets the most votes is the wording that we'll go with. If there turns out to be a tie, then we'll vote between them, okay? So here we go. I don't think I need to read the statement to you. The first one is from issue equity and inclusion. Would you raise your hand, please, if you like the wording of the original statement? 1, 2. Raise your hand, please, if you prefer the wording of the revision. 1, 2. Amy, how are you voting?
I just did a thumbs up for the revision.
Okay, so that's 3.
I haven't voted.
I'm sorry.
I'm the one who hasn't voted.
All right. Would you like to vote?
Yes.
Did you say yes?
I would like to vote.
Yes,
And-
okay.
The original statement.
Original statement.
Original, sorry.
The original?
Yeah.
All right. So we're 2, so there's now 3 for the original, 3 for the revision. I'll break the tie then. I'll vote for the revision. So that's the one that we'll use for number 1. Right, number 2, which is another one from our equity and inclusion
Stu,
issue.
and
Yes.
it might, I know we're holding our working session, it might be helpful, maybe just to read
You want me to
aloud,
read?
only just so that people who are here and listening in might
Okay,
just know this.
I'm happy to do that. I'll read the one for you that we just voted on, that turned out to be 4 in favor of the revision, 3 for the original. The original statement said, "We support adequately funded programs to support the health and wellness of all students, including access to appropriate nutrition." The revision added some words to that. "We support adequately funded programs to support the health and wellness of all students, including access to appropriate nutrition." These are the new words. "And access to physical, mental, and social supports and resources." Okay? Number 2 is another equity and inclusion statement. The original says, "We believe every Colorado student deserves equity in and access to quality school resources, including budget, time, personnel, supplies, facilities, nutrition services, technology, transportation, and support services, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender identity, level of ability, first language, or socioeconomic status." The revision strikes the words "regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender identity, level of ability, first language, or socioeconomic status." Okay, those of you who are in favor of the original statement, would you please raise your hand? 2, 3. What are we getting? Are we getting anything from Amy on this
Yeah,
one?
Amy, you could just put thumbs up on the one you want, I'll watch it.
So nothing yet?
I haven't seen any.
I did revision.
Okay.
Okay, just a second. So that was 3 for the original. Please vote for the revision if that's your choice, and Amy will be 1, 2, 3. I'll break the tie again. I'm going to vote for the original statement on this one. All right? Number 3. I'm sorry, what's this?
That's from Amy. That's what
Oh,
she's voting for.
okay.
I'll be right back. I'm listening.
All right. Number 3 is also equity and inclusion. The original statement, "We believe that all school facilities need to be physically accessible to every member of the school community." Or the revision, "We believe that all school facilities need to be physically accessible to every member of the school community, including community members without a direct connection to the school." So the revision adds a clarification. Those of you who are in favor of the original for number 3, please raise your hand. Okay. Those of you who are in favor of the revision, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. I didn't have to break the tie. All right. And, oops. I just just went to another picture. I think this may not work for me. How about if you operate it for me? Okay, let's do that. All right, here is number 4. The original statement, we support local control over pay systems and strategies for all employee groups that acknowledge experience, longevity, knowledge, and performance, such as skills, professional growth, responsibilities, and collaboration. The revision says we support locally controlled salaries and benefits for all employee groups that acknowledge experience, longevity, knowledge, and performance, such as skills, professional growth, responsibilities, and collaboration, right? Those of you who are in favor of the original statement,
I mean, to me, they're both the same.
you need to vote one way or the other. Okay, so that's 2.
Oh, my hand was up. Okay.
Barb, where did you land? On the original?
Mhm.
All right, so that's 3. All right, those who are in favor of the revision? 1, 2, 3. I'll also vote in favor of the revision. All right, so that's the one. Number 5, original statement. We believe in consistent and equitable treatment of all students with regard to classroom management and disciplinary practices. The revision, we believe in classroom management and disciplinary practices that are followed by all and consistently applied to each student. All right? Those of you who are in favor of the original statement, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those of you who prefer the revised statement, that's 1, okay? So that the original statement stands on that one. Number 6, we're moving now to behavior and discipline. A false assumption exists that schools are either the source of the behavioral issues or the best way to fix them. In most cases, neither is true. Ultimately, the challenges our schools face with discipline are symptoms of larger societal problems, and policymakers and advocates need to think more broadly about solutions. The revision says, we believe the challenges our schools face with discipline are symptoms of larger societal problems, and policymakers and advocates tend to think more broadly about solutions. So the revision basically took out the first sentence. That's the difference between these two. All right, those of you who are in favor of the original statement, those of you who are in favor of the revision. Okay, so we'll go with the revision on that one. All right, number 7, student mental health. Original statement, we believe in focusing on the importance of positive relationships and experiences in learning environments to foster healthy brain and human development. The revision, we believe that positive relationships and experiences in learning environments foster improved mental health. Those of you who are in favor of the original statement, and those of you who are in favor of the revision. All right? Yeah, okay, so the original goes. Just have 2 left. Student and staff mental health. Original statement, we believe that a safe and engaging learning environment allows students to feel a sense of belonging when they see themselves as respected, contributing members of their learning environment where they are able to take risks. The revision shortens it to read, we believe that a safe and engaging learning environment allows students to feel a sense of belonging when they see themselves as respected, contributing members of that environment. Those of you who are in favor of the original statement, those of you who are in favor of the revision, okay. So the revision received 4 votes, so we'll use the revision on that one. Accountability, there's an original statement, there are then 3 revisions. I'll read them and then I'll ask you to vote on all 4. Original statement, this is accountability. We believe that principals and teachers influence student achievement primarily through changes in the school climate. Number 1 says, we believe that changes in school climate influence student achievement. Revision 2 says we believe that principals and teachers influence student achievement primarily through holding every student to high standards for learning. And the 3rd revision says we believe that principals and teachers influence student achievement through changes in the school climate and evidence-based teaching and learning standards. All right? Those of you who favor the original statement. Revision number 1. Revision number 2. Revision number 3. Okay, that's 4. Okay, that takes care of that. All right. So, thank you very much for doing that. We will still need at some point to work on our governance statement and the intro or preamble. That work probably won't take place at a board meeting. And because our initial work has taken place at a board meeting, Dr. Schaefer told me that a small group can then assemble to continue the work and then bring back the decision. That is what you told me.
A small group meaning 2 or less. 2 or less. You can't have more, because otherwise that constitutes a meeting. So you can meet as a partner with one other person.
All right, that's not what you told me, but that's what we'll do.
Okay.
All right? So, is someone interested in working with me on doing some of the wording, the wordsmithing? One person apparently can. Dawn, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
So, we will get back to you after we've had a chance to work on the governance statement and the intro and preamble, and we can get your approval at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. All right, we move on to some bigger items. We need to get up, we don't need a break. Do you guys need to get up and move around? No? Okay. We can do a trash dump. I did mine while we were working. We're gonna start with 5.1, which is fire update.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Education, Dr. Schaefer, Todd Piccone, Assistant Superintendent Operations. Before really we get going into the presentation on the next slide, is just a, before we talk about us, the impact to our community on the fire, I think takes a second to recognize, all those that either were fighting the fire, sheriff, local police, our families that are impacted. Anyway, it's a large community impact, so I think it was just worth noting. Those are pictures from our local fire authority, our local deputy, a co-responder that was in the area. So you can just see the impact, and it's a bigger impact than just us. So the other thing I want to do is just thank our partnership. We have a pretty unique partnership here with the county, to where we are really in step with them as things are happening. We pretty much know as it happens, and we support them. We actually helped with this fire in their emergency operations center. We helped with different staging. Anyway, it goes to show just the good partnership we have with the local enforcement, and that helps us really get through this type of disaster. So we just want to tell the board and community really what we did and what the impact was on TSD. So when we were first made aware, the first step was actually a call to our neighboring district that went through a pretty large fire to learn from lessons learned. What worked, what didn't work, what should we be thinking about. So that was actually, I think, minute 2 of finding out about what happened. And that's really some of the steps we took. We engaged a certified industrial hygienist, and they really helped guide us what we should do as we're impacted by smoke and or fire. So we did that. We shut off all the air to the buildings. When I say we shut off the air, we didn't actually shut the air off. We closed the outside dampers. And what that allows is the air inside the building circulates, and it'll circulate through our filters. So it actually helps the inside air better than the outside air, which helps protect people. We've gone through and we're changing filters. As we all probably felt and saw, the smoke was pretty dense and thick for a few days. So the recommendation was to do a full filter change. It's faster than we usually do. We did that. We also worked pretty close with Larimer County Health to understand, okay, what does it mean to clean? What does it mean for smoke and outside air quality? What is the guidelines around there? The other thing, lesson learned was communication. So real quick, within I think the first 3-4 hours, we it's still up the website. We had a splash page to where there's resources for families. It's just a place for people to go. If they didn't have anywhere else, it was at least they knew that we were taking the steps to help our larger community. So we did that, and in the end, really what it came down to is Big T was the most impacted school. They were within the evac zone for, let's say, a good chunk of the time. When we got released to go back in there, I believe it's Monday morning, it was, there was some damage. I mean, it smelled like there was a campfire in there. There was some soot. Anyway, so once we assessed that, we got the hygienist on the line and said, okay, what do we do to make this building safe for occupants? From that call on Monday through today and almost 24/7, we've had a crew of professional cleaners come in that do this for a living, so they mitigate the smoke by cleaning. Also cleaning all the ductwork, all the filters, all the air, and then washing down some of the washing down the outside equipment. So, a big shout out to the Big T staff. They've had to pivot and be pretty flexible here this week because, a lot of the angst of the year is the start of the year when you want to get rooms ready and you want to get set up. They can't be in their building. So, we're doing all we can to get it open actually by Saturday night to then allow them back in the building Sunday to prepare. But it was a pretty good transition. All of our district principals, leaders came together to figure out, okay, where can we house you? It was just everyone really stepped up to take care of really that school. But that as I said, the cleaning's happening. They'll move back in or have an officer move back in Sunday to start some of those pieces, and we're working with building leadership as far as helping them. But then next Monday, we're just a few days away from school starts, and then it'll be ready there. So we've taken all the steps, and the fire, especially with the rains, is, I don't say it's done, but there's still some risk out there, but it's subsided. The percent containment is subsided to where most of the area, I think, is just a pre-evac, and we're okay occupying as we did. So we just want to provide the board and community with a quick update on what we did and where we're at.
Sorry. I just also wanted to provide a shout out and thank you to Todd Piccone. It's hard to recognize yourself, so I'm going to recognize Todd for him. And the work that Todd and his team have done as well. There was a huge maintenance and operations staff effort as well. A lot of this behind the scenes work. There was a lot of work, coordination at the district level. If you remember last week on Monday and Tuesday, if you recall, there was a lot of unknowns, right? The fire was doubling and tripling in size, wind, our air quality was really bad. We had multiple meetings with Larimer County health officials, other area resource officials. There was just a lot of work, and fortunately things appear to be receding and moving in a great direction, but there was just a ton of round-the-clock work, quite honestly, to maintain the health and safety of our school district.
Can I ask one question? Do you know, is it possible, this just came to my thought, for all the costs incurred with, getting it put back to its original state, is there any way to get dollars because it was declared a federal, disaster or emergency? Is there any way to utilize some of that to get some reimbursement?
It has to hit a certain level, so we don't know if it's at that level. Additionally, we're working with insurance too to see if that's a possibility. So there's two avenues.
My rates go up, so
Yeah, it's working with the county, because when that deck was issued, it has to hit a level for reimbursement, so that's what we went through.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Todd?
Are there students or staff that have been impacted that potentially make it difficult for them to start school next week?
Yes, so there was, and there is. We reached out to every staff or student, family that was impacted to see what assistance they needed. And I believe the last update, we were filtering down to a few that are impacted. All the roads are back open, and I don't believe unless someone else has information that, anyone in our district had a house or facility loss, but we did make contact, because when people are evacuated, it actually, they fall underneath the McKinney Metro Act, so we provide additional services for them. And so we reached out to every family that was evacuated that we knew of to make sure they were covered.
We'll also have teams on site at the schools during the opening week of school for mental health support or any other resource support as well. We have the 3 mainly impacted communities, 3 schools, but all principals know that district resources will be made available upon ask.
And I think TEF has.
The foundation
resource
is,
for
there's a
us.
lot, the community has
Yeah.
been extraordinary. Thompson Education Foundation, the community really pulled together and continues to pull together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stay right here.
I wondered if you wanted
Yeah.
to, what do you think we're
Yeah,
next?
you need to.
Okay, our next item is bond and potential bond and special levy. Update.
And now I've got a sidekick, Gordon Jones with me, so watch out. All right, tonight, we have been talking about a potential proposed bond for the needs for several months now. So this is really a general update and summary of what we are looking at at the next board meeting. So we'll go through first just a general overview. It's always good when the community's looking. This is really who we are. The amount of schools we have, employees, and then our celebrations. This is the good work that all of our staff is doing. So it's good to point out when we're talking about a potential initiative like this. Just a planning overview. So we started gathering data back in 2022. And then really from then to now, it looks like there was 2 meetings. There was probably 100 meetings in between there to gather feedback. So between students, each school staff was met with. We did larger community feeder meetings, specific either business or town meetings, just to talk about here's our needs and what could this look like. Additionally, our master plan committee, MPC, was at the table this entire time, kind of help staff guide through what our long-term plan was. So when we took all the information, we found that we had a total need, our total need was much larger than 220 million. But part of the process we did in our outreach was public survey. In the public survey, there was a range from 160 million to 300 plus million to try to see where the community was. What we found that between the 160 and 250 was more of a sweet spot than the higher number. And the other piece that we found was from the 160 plus, if we focused on CTE, so career tech ed, and then air conditioning, those are 2 highlights that the community wanted to see. So that's really the additive from the 160 million to get to the 220 million. In each one of those buckets, so the first one is the 78 million proposed educational enhancements. So that's CTE. So when we look at that, that's pathways at Thompson Career Campus, and also looking at how do we expand it in the other high schools. So that's really a hub, but then how do we keep it going and increase the capacity of it at the high schools. The other thing that it includes is various AC projects to the tune of about 60 million. So that includes in this the option for Berthoud, the Ivy, Berthoud, and Turner, and then also a large chunk for the rest of the district to not complete AC throughout the district, but make a substantial chunk completing of it. And then the bottom left picture, that just shows what a program enhancement is. So when we talked about an effective needs classroom, it's really, we have a lot of programs that don't fit the space they're in. So that's really described as the touch and feel of what the students see. It really customizes the space for the students, whether it's that kind of space or a STEM space, or an innovation space. So that's more school specific. Growth needs. So one of the components of the bond was a growth need in the Berthoud area. So this is a conceptual rendering of what it may look like at the 3 schools. This proposal includes a renovation addition to Turner, IB, and Berthoud. The need for growth was about 300 students in the next 7-ish years. So this accomplishes that. So it's taking our current asset, remodeling and renovating and putting additional space on for that growth need. And then maintenance needs. This slide could have multiple pictures on it and really go on for 1,000 slides, but we only have so much time, so we narrowed it down. And really what this is $58 million to our high priority maintenance needs. So you can see there, those are some examples. That still includes HVAC repair, replacement, whether it's HVAC controls. You can see we have, for example, have tennis courts shut down at Mountain View. We still have asbestos in some of our buildings, so it's replacing that. And that's not decoration on the ceiling, that's from a roof leak, so that's going through and fixing up some of those pieces. And then security needs. One of our goals, which will be complete in this proposed bond if it so moves forward, is finish seeing secure vestibules at all of our schools. So there's about 7 that don't have a true vestibule. We did do upgrades with the 2018 bond, but this will then complete those. One of our more complex ones is Bill Reed. So in looking at what it could look like, this is really taking the classroom on the first floor, making that the office, and then converting the upstairs where the admin is to classrooms. Again, it sounds simple. There's a little more to it than that, but we just want to make sure that the solution fits the budget that's proposed here. So that is probably our more complex project in the security. But there's also buildings like Sarah Miller, Big T, Edmondson that need that more robust standard secure entry that you'll see at like High Plains or Peakview or Riverview. So just to recap, is the total ask is $220 million. You can see the buckets there. What is shown in the attachment or the link there, the QR code, and underneath the TSD bond, that goes into each specific school, outlines what each school would get for growth, security, and maintenance, and shows pictures of what the needs are at those schools. So our goal is to be transparent with what each school needed and what, so it was a way to show the community, here's the need at each one of our schools that fits that $220 million. Also that is the tax impact calculator. So you go to that, you can actually input your home value, and then it'll spit out the proposed tax impact.
And it's all done off the
QR code,
on
or
the
you can
website.
go to the website,
Okay.
and there's a button that says proposed or potential 24 bond. And from there, I will turn it over to Gordon.
So the second potential initiative that has been researched is, while this says special levy, that is an accurate term. In 2016, the state legislature adopted legislation that allows for a debt-free schools initiative. This is not to be confused with the mill levy override statute that is in law. Two totally different statutes. What the special levy allows us to do, or the debt-free schools initiative, is to identify items that are currently budgeted in our annual budget in 3 areas: capital construction, new or upgraded technology, and maintenance, and solicit funds for that from a property tax mill rate that would be assessed. at the rate of 13 million has been identified. Those dollars that would be collected have to be spent in those areas. The language in the statute is very prescriptive on where those dollars have to be spent. They have to be tracked separately as a sub-fund of the general fund, just like we do with our 3 million overrides that we have in place. But the dollars that are freed up that are currently in the budget, these dollars would replace those, freeing up the dollars to be used on something else. Some of those potential areas could be salaries and benefits, it could be technology replacements, it could be a maintenance fund that's available. Any balance not spent in any one year carries over to the next year and remains in that fund. It still maintains the restrictions that are associated with those dollars. They have to be spent on those items. But that would allow us to, rather than having to either go into general fund reserves or reduce other areas, if a boiler went out that we had to replace at $600,000 or $700,000, we could have a fund available here that would cover that particular item as well. So that's the intent behind the special levy or the debt-free schools question. That is a potential to be included on the November ballot.
Do we have to designate everything that it could potentially go towards? Or not? So when we just say salaries, benefits, and other needs, that is really broad and we don't have to be specific, like if we were to say band instruments, or we don't have to go that detailed.
The funds that would be freed up by directing this $13 million to these 3 specific areas, that's freed up. It's really at board's discretion on where those dollars would be spent.
All right.
Could be spent.
Could be spent, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Gordon over this? I didn't think to ask if there were questions for Todd. Don? Questions? Nancy?
Yeah, I know you're not surprised by that. The one question, I have a couple, but my understanding was when the URA Centerra South was voted on, that did include the language that new mill levy overrides, whether for bond or whatever, would not be diverted to the Centerra South URA.
That's a good question that I will have to look at. I believe that is part of the IGA or the MOU, the agreements that we have in place, is those dollars are not diverted.
I understand the original one, that's not the case, but for the new URA,
I
that is
believe
the case.
you are correct in that statement, yes. Those dollars are not diverted and still come to the district. So if a new mill was approved by the voters under the Debt-Free Schools Act, those dollars would come to the district. Anything associated with the assessed valuation within the URA would still come to the district. It would not go to anything in the URA.
Right, we would receive 100%.
Correct.
Okay, I thought I remembered that the other day, and I just wanted to make sure.
I will confirm that, but I believe that is the case, yes.
And then the second, which would kind of plays into what Barb brought up, going forward, if this potential levy passes, when you go to prepare the budget, that will be a specific part of the budget broken out so people can see what maintenance and technology, et cetera, we're gonna spend it on, and are we gonna clearly show what that freed up money, we are saying we are committed to spending it on?
Absolutely. The first part of your question or your comment was, yes, the items have already been identified in the budget that we currently have. So it wouldn't be adding items to the budget that then we could apply these dollars to. It's dollars that are already identified in the 24-25 budget that are very easy to quickly identify.
To easily show within the budget process that whatever new fund is created for it.
Absolutely, and then the sub-fund that would be created where these proceeds would have to go all the proceeds going into that fund and the expenditures coming out of that fund at wherever the board determines those funds to go would be able to be very clearly identified as well.
And I believe currently, the proposed potential ballot language says that the money freed up would be spent, committed for salaries, and benefits.
There are items that are called out in the potential ballot language that we'll talk about in just a minute that, yes, it identifies potential areas.
Okay. If we keep it very specific of what we'll use that freed up money for, then okay.
That's a good point. The ballot language, as it's written, we have to maintain integrity in the ballot language. So if the ballot language says that freed up dollars will be spent in specific areas, yes, to maintain the integrity of the ballot question, they would need to be spent in those areas. So I should retract a bit my statement on whatever the board wants to spend them on. That's in alignment with the language in the ballot. That's what I would further that statement with.
Another question? Does Amy have any questions? Amy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, you go ahead now.
Bart.
I know. Oh, Stu,
Hi.
yeah, okay.
All right.
I was trying real hard to remember Amy and then I forgot where I started.
Laura Lee, can you go back to the previous slide? So Gordon, is the $13 million available each year?
It is a recurring item, yes. It operates very similar to the mill levy overrides that we have currently in place in the district. But yes, it is a recurring amount, yes.
All right. And then my next comment is really just a comment, it's not a question. The words in the text box that the dollars are freed up in these areas could fund a variety of needs. I'm very much in favor of that. I think it gives the district flexibility to deal with a whole variety of issues. It also means that in order for the staff, the teaching staff and others to receive raises, we wouldn't have to necessarily go to a mill levy override, because the money that is available as part of this $13 million could be used for this. I think it's a very smart approach, and I believe you told us at a previous meeting that there are a few other districts that are already doing something like this. Do you recall what those districts are?
I believe there's 7 or 8. I could say Boulder Valley, Denver Public Schools, Cherry Creek, Inglewood. I want to say Steamboat Springs. Please don't hold me to that. It seems like there's 1 or 2 others, but I can provide that information and show exactly.
That's fine, just those examples are helpful. So whereas this idea is really breaking ground for us, this is not breaking ground, this is not totally innovative throughout the state of Colorado, and I find some comfort in knowing that we're not coming up with an idea and then not being sure whether this is going to work or not. Obviously it does work because it's been working in other districts, so I'm very pleased with this special levy, and potentially, if we decide to go for whatever ask we have of the taxpayers, I'm very much supportive of this as an individual.
I could also add that I have personally fielded calls from several other districts. Out of a sense of confidentiality, I won't reveal who those are, but that have understood that we may be considering this option, and they are very intrigued by it as well. So I think it is going to do nothing but gain momentum for districts across the state.
Thank you, Gordon.
So, sorry.
So thing would be, I would like to request that maybe, since last year when delivering burritos, I pestered you about this. I'm wondering if this year I could do burritos with you again, pester you about, updating our budget format and the way we present it, so.
I would defer to the master scheduler, that is.
Nancy, we love partnering you with Gordon, so that will not be an issue.
I would welcome the opportunity. The second
right.
part
Yes, I know you
of
have
this
more.
is, as the board considers, the potential for both of these, they are two separate initiatives that could be, potential initiatives that could be considered. Attached to board docs are, resolutions, draft resolutions, discussion resolutions, and they are appropriately marked as such, that would, it should the board, they would likely be presented to the board for consideration at the next business meeting. The drafting of these resolutions is done by, bond counsel of the district. And at this time, we happen to have, two members of our bond counsel in place. With your permission, Madam
Absolutely.
President.
I said I wanted to know who the council was, so.
Representatives from Butler Snow Law Firm in Denver to, please join us. We'll let them sit together as a team so they don't feel like we're trying to separate or divide and conquer. And I would ask first that they each introduce themselves and then provide an overview of the resolution process, within which is potential ballot language that has been developed by bond counsel as well. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kim Crawford. I'm with Butler Snow, and we are really happy to be hired by the district to help with your election this year. I mean, as background, I don't know if you want to, I've been doing this for over 25 years. We've very active in school district elections, and so one school district that Gordon neglected was Littleton, so they also did the, what I call the debt-free schools levy. I'm gonna go back and forth with, I need glasses to see you all, but not glasses to see my,
I get you.
my resolution. So the way we presented these are two resolutions, so you don't have to vote one resolution to approve both. You can decide individually, if you like one or the other, and go yes or no according, to what your desires are. So these resolutions are pretty close to the same thing except for the ballot questions. Of course, I cite different statutes in each of them because the bonds are governed by a different statute than extra revenues like mill levy overrides. They're both in mill levy overrides are in 2254. 108.7 is the new added debt-free schools levy, and that is something that has been, as Gordon said, used by a number of other school districts. So really, those are the essentials in the ballot question. We, of the resolutions, they both set forth that. You name a designated election official who's going to be the person who contacts and coordinates with the county clerk to conduct the elections. The county clerk, I believe, has been notified that you are thinking about participating, because we always want to make sure we don't commit to anything too far in advance, because there's Fair Campaign Practices Act that once you adopt the ballot questions, then you are prohibited from spending public money to advocate. So, but then on the flip side, the counties need to know who's going to participate, so they send out usually little emails and reminders and asking people to do that. So there will be an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with the county clerk, specifying their duties and your duties, and those are approved as to form these resolutions. That needs to go back to the clerk's office, signed by August 27th. There's other duties that certainly, what we do when we do election work and election help is that we go through that. We work very closely with your staff to make sure all of the election deadlines are met and the election timelines and everything that needs to be done is done, because at the end of the day, when the ballot question passes, we're going to give an opinion that these bonds were validly issued, and part of that goes back to the election. If you don't have a valid election, you can't have valid bonds. So we try to be very involved from the very beginning of the process. So I think that's about about it. And then so like I said, each one has a separate ballot question, and I'm happy to discuss the questions if you'd like to do that, or just answer questions about. And I'm sorry, this is this is Courtney DeGardi. I just went right into my my spiel. This is Courtney DeGardi from our office as well. She's been working with us for about 4 years now, and she also helps me with elections.
I would just mention that within the resolution, the sample ballot language or potential ballot language is listed within the resolution. And from the study session, that the retreat that the board did, the few suggestions have been incorporated into that language as well, and vetted by Butler Snow and Hilltop Securities, our municipal advisor. And these ladies would love to answer whatever questions you may
Love to
have
answer.
on.
Let's start with Denise and see. No questions.
I wanna think of one, but I don't have any.
Alexandra?
I don't know, so I'm trying to read it, so.
Well, we'll come back.
Come back.
If we will. I don't have any. Amy, any questions on the resolutions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Stu?
I do have a question. Is there a relationship between your firm and Kaplan and Ernst, our actual legal firm that we use in other aspects and for other business? Is there a relationship between the two of you in regard to a bond issue, special levy, etc.? Or do you operate independently and take care of your business and they take care of their business and never the twain shall meet? Just
Well,
curious.
The twain always does meet, because we work very closely with Kaplan and Ernst on a lot of, they represent a lot of school districts that we also issue bonds for. They work with you on a much more, regular basis.
Yes.
Because issuers don't issue bonds every year.
Yep.
And Gordon is saying, "Phew, thank heavens." But I do work with a number of the attorneys at Kaplan and Ernst who become involved in the bond issues. And typically what we do during a bond issue is we copy them on all the documents, they review documents, but like us, we represent you, so we all have a fiduciary relationship to the district. We certainly copy, I think Dick Bump is your primary, and I've known Dick for years and years and years, so, worked with him. They review ballot questions sometimes. They very seldom, have comments or questions, but once they do, sometimes we have to work on certain issues that come up during a ballot question, a bond issue. But toward the end of the bond process, we're gonna need an opinion from them as well. We provide opinions that the bonds are validly issued and are tax exempt for federal tax purposes. We get an opinion from them that there's no litigation that impacts the bonds, that you as board members have all been validly elected and you're certified to vote, and your votes were, we can count your votes because you're all legally here. So we do work together with them a lot, but we each have certainly different roles.
Okay, thank you.
If I could add just one comment to that, I have had discussions with Kaplan and Ernst attorneys as well already in this process, so they are fully versed and fully aware of these discussions.
Okay, thank you.
I did think of one.
Just a minute, we're with Dawn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dawn? Denise? Okay, Nancy.
In regards to the new URA Centera South, is there value in incorporating in the ballot language that the proceeds from these two bonds will not be diverted to that new URA agreement? Just to help solidify it with a segment. That was a pretty contentious.
Right. I don't think
Okay.
it would be valid to add it to the ballot questions. I think your contractual agreements with them, and I haven't reviewed these, agreements, but, yeah, I don't think it belongs in a ballot question, because we just don't know what's gonna happen with state law.
Okay, anybody else? Did you come up with one?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a very good question, but
Ask it.
I'm just sort of curious, like, because at our retreat, we had talked about adding the monitored by the citizen
oversight committee, and it was added to both of them, but sort of in very different places. And so I'm just curious, I guess, sort of why it was added in each place in each.
I think I
one.
just thought that's where it flowed better. I mean,
Okay.
there was no rhyme or reason to why I put it in.
Okay.
If you would like one of them to be called out more, I think, I can't remember where I put it in each one, but, I think it's more in the middle of the debt-free school.
It is, and then it's like kind of at the end of the.
Yeah, and we could certainly move it to the end of the debt-free schools levy, so that it's the last thing they read, instead of, I mean, cause sometimes this is what I call the debt-free schools, and I know Gordon doesn't call that, but, is kind of a bulky paragraph, whereas the
Yeah,
other,
it
the
is.
bond is longer, so we kind of break it up.
Okay.
So that people can visually see what you're doing with your bullet, this is what we're gonna do. But I can move that to the end if that is something that you,
I don't know
You
if
prefer.
it needs to be, I don't know, I mean, so it's like a stylistic choice.
yeah, I just
not
thought it flowed better there, but,
Okay. Okay, I mean, I think it's fine, I probably would need some time to process.
and certainly if there's something that comes up, you can contact Gordon.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything more? Thank you for coming tonight.
Of course.
And helping us with this. And to just know, I kept saying, who is our
Bond counsel.
bond counsel? Yeah, so I was curious. Thank you.
Well, we're happy to be here, so thank you.
We appreciate it.
So for the board, our plan would be to bring this forward to you on August 21st at your regularly scheduled business meeting, for you then to consider our proposed bond and proposed special levy. So, and then to adopt the resolution as presented right now as potential. So you would then move to formalize it by taking a vote on it.
First. Okay, questions over that? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Stick around.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, that's right, because you probably are part of this next group. All right, let's get up and just move around a minute. I'm gonna go get the chocolate and bring it over here. 'Cause there's a big group that comes up next. Coming up to join us. We are moving on to 5.3, which is the discipline data review. And we have a whole crew of people that will be joining us, but I'm gonna turn it over to Melissa.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board. We do have a big crew here tonight to talk with you about a topic that you were interested in hearing about. And so we have prepared for you a review of discipline data, all the way from teacher-reported and handled referrals to office-reported handled referrals, as well as safety and security and law enforcement and everything in between. So it's very comprehensive, a lot of data, as well as what we are doing, what results we're getting, and where we will go moving forward. So I have two speakers tonight that I will introduce for you, and we have many folks who are joining us who will be introduced as appropriate. They are here to help field questions or anything like that. We have Patty Burton, who is our Executive Director of Student Support Services, and Joe Bajanski, who is our Director of Safety and Security. And so the teamwork here between the two divisions around student discipline has been amazing, and we are looking forward to this discussion tonight, so I will turn it over to them.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, and board members. We appreciate having time to talk about this important subject. So all the data that we're talking about is from last year. So our Strive, that doesn't work. Okay, so sometimes the vision, so I have like both. So Strive 2025 connection for all of this presentation. Of course, focus area 1, student achievement. Eliminate disparities in student achievement, growth, graduation, behavioral outcomes, and educational opportunities in student careers. The second focus area, number 2, is inclusive and supportive culture, and we'd like to lift 3 of those. 2.1 is to ensure learning environments support a positive culture and climate. 2.2, staff are culturally responsive to changing demographics of the district. And 2.4, ensuring all facilities are welcoming, safe, and meet the needs of students, staff, and the community. So our goal for tonight's discipline data review is to talk about how we collect our discipline referrals, and dip into what we consider teacher-handled referrals and office-managed referrals. We will develop an understanding of our discipline data by using the perspective of who, what, where, when, and why. And we will share our updated strategies for addressing discipline concerns for the 24-25 year. Okay, so the first part I will take and go over, and that's our discipline referral data. We're going to do a brief overview of discipline data referral process, classroom managed or teacher handled, office managed, and then some trends for the past 3 years. And then we're going to, instead of my sidekick, partner in crime, I think maybe might be crime, please. He will be going over all this information with threat assessment, crisis response, and the state of the union with those pieces and partnerships. And then we are going to be collectively coming together to talk about our 24-25 system-wide strategies to help support our students in reducing discipline and helping teachers respond, and then partnering together for some of the pieces that we saw that were compelling in the data that we are presenting tonight. So teacher-handled behaviors. So basically, teachers have a system in which they collect referral data, and they put it in the system. They may collaborate with another staff member at the school, and those are for more minor discipline pieces. There could be inappropriate language, it could be physical contact, it could be some disrespectful behavior, disruptive behavior, and these are all like in our system to help support if a student has had multiple redirections or is repeating some of those pieces, a teacher may be compelled to put that in to our system. So these are the more minor pieces. When we do this collection system, it's really about documenting it so we can look at patterns of behavior across the system, as well as really looking at is a student collecting a lot of those discipline issues, and then how can we respond for that? So we're looking at both patterns across the system and if a student needs more support. With those pieces, if it's documented into a system, then it is an expectation that parents are contacted and talked through with how the teacher might have handled it, like, we think we're in a good space, wanted you to know, to be informed, or maybe even a parent conference. So like I said, how we handle this data. So every school has a school culture climate PBIS team, and we call it the Big Five data. So they look at the minor data collected or the teacher handled behaviors to look at patterns across the system. So they look to see some questions they might ask while they're looking at it. Based on our data, we need to increase the supervision in the hallway during lunch passing periods because we see an increased amount of physical contact in those areas. So, like, first course of action is, can we change a structure in our environment to help alleviate those issues? Another question might be, based on previous data collected, we need to reteach expectations and plan to positively reinforce students during the month of April, because maybe the month of April for our school is really hot, and it has been for the last couple of years, so we can predict that we want to do a booster activity, so to speak. Another piece is, wow, we have one grade level that is collecting the majority of all of our teacher-handled behaviors. So what can we do to support that grade level in resources and supervision, reteaching, so that we can really look at that and really put things in place before it just snowballs. And then finally, based on our referral data, it looks like this particular student has repeated referrals, maybe from a specials teacher and maybe a classroom teacher, maybe outside, and maybe it's one particular behavior. So now we're looking at, it's maybe not an environmental piece, but more of a student piece where we want to come together with the team, with the teacher, in a PLC format, or with a group of teachers and the parent to say, we are noticing that the student is struggling in this area. And then they would put some stronger interventions in place with the parent to really try to diminish that behavior, and so the student is having more success in class. So we have today, just looking at first, is the top 3 types of behavioral incidents handled by teachers. And so this is where I'm definitely gonna need this. Apologies. So the slide deck goes like district, all district is on the upper left, and then it's elementary, middle, and then high school. And so overall, as this reads, for our teacher-handled behaviors that they worked with, we had a total of, these are our top 3, so 1,514 classroom disruptions, 910 with disrespect, and 1,617 for physical contact. Elementary, it's interesting to note that they have physical contact as one of their highest. And that changes with middle and high school, and a lot of times it's because when you're younger and you're handsy and you're playing football and it gets rough over and over, you're gonna have physical contact. That doesn't necessarily mean they're harming or fighting. It's more of a developmental piece. We're gonna teach to what that is, and we're gonna reteach how to use our words and our actions and other strategies.
An outdoor recess.
Outdoor recess, yes. And we can actually collect that it's from a particular sport. So, say if you have Foursquare, sometimes a school might go, oh my gosh, every recess now, Foursquare is coming up with challenges. So maybe they use their data and say, we're gonna reteach through our PE class the rules, so we can get back on track and reduce those referrals. So a couple of these, I wanna note that you would see in middle school, for instance, you have a classroom disruption and then you have disturbance disruption. So for middle school and high school, often you will see the difference between classroom and then the disturbance disruption. Often that is that the classroom disruption is actually in the classroom, and then the others are disruption in other places of the environment. There's a few that I would need to explain because they're a little bit confusing. So next, we're gonna still look at handled teachers. Ooh, thank you. The next is discipline actions handled by teachers. So what did they do for these teacher-handled behaviors? And overall, you can see as a district, it's conferencing with the student, detention, loss of privileges. Elementary, more conferencing with student, loss of privileges, and then parent-guardian conference, where that is a bit more of a, hey, just wanted to let you know these are happening, can we sit down and have a bigger conversation? Middle school and high school, of course, you may see more of a detention piece there, and then you have conference with student and teacher-student conference. So, conference with student and teacher-student conference is essentially the same thing. So just kind of wanted to make that clear. Sometimes people who aren't teachers might put conference with student, but it also doesn't mean that teachers aren't using that. So what we are doing with this data is also looking at, can we, and Kelly's right here, can we look at what we're collecting and make it more seamless, if it's the same thing? Okay. The next is looking at those locations. So we have overall for the district, classroom is going to be the largest, and that is not a surprise because the majority of time that students are in school are in classrooms. And then we have on-campus classroom and then playground. So on-campus classroom should also just be classroom. That's another tweak that we would like to make into the system. And then we have playground, of course, for the littles. And then middle and high, we have classroom, hallway, and then on-campus classroom is still classroom. So we also looked at the top 5 grades receiving referrals by teachers across our whole system. So I don't know if you wanna take a look at that, if there's any surprises there.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
So it turns out that's a national thing. We just don't like littles, is the message that we send first and second graders with numbers like that.
What do you mean by we don't like the littles?
Well, our third highest number is second graders, right? Like it's just, so the students that get,
Well, I didn't look at it that way at all, that it was targeting certain students. I just see that as a social piece.
yeah, I mean,
that the
some of
kids
it is
have.
developmental, right? There's
Yeah,
ages that
they-
are harder. I know, cause you taught second most
Yeah,
of your
and
career.
First, first and second, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's a national trend that the kids that get suspended most often are the K through second. Preschoolers too, I think.
And we will look at the majors here in a minute for office handled and suspensions. There is state law regarding what we can do for suspensions for our grade 1 and 2, actually. There's some state law that helps guide us so that doesn't happen.
And again, for clarity, these are the top 5 that are handled by teachers.
By
So these would
teachers,
be, right, and so we'll look at data that are, like she said,
Yeah.
that are office.
And then we can take a look at time. Months and days of the week are what we're presenting, but we can also look at time of day, and that's really important when we're looking at putting strategies into place. So here is, oops, okay. So by months, February might be a time for us where before February, like coming back in January, let's look at what we need to do to prepare for February so we don't have so many in that. And then day of week, which Thursday has been a national trend for 20 years. 20 years.
Why do we have any on the weekend?
Sorry, I was going to address that. So that was a puzzler, so we looked into that, and for everyone. So when you enter the data, you have, if somebody puts it on the weekend, then they need to go back and log what day it happened. So
Thank
those
you.
incidents did not happen on Saturday and Sunday, they in fact happened in a day.
That makes sense.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about office managed referrals. And so with office managed referrals, administrator investigates with a due process procedure and determines the appropriate discipline action. This includes communication with the parent and guardian. This includes follow-up with the teachers who reported the incident. And the only office managed incidents reported to the state are those that have disciplinary action that result in a classroom removal, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, expulsion, and law enforcement referrals. And Carrie is our expert in what she must report to the state.
And bullying and harassment.
Yes. If, those are the types, yeah. If, right now though, we are collecting data, and it's important, of office referrals, because every time a student is referred to the office, exclusionary practices like in-school suspension and those things are really important, but also any office referral generally means time out of our classrooms. And so we know that students who have most time in the classrooms are gonna receive the best benefit of instruction and achievement. So here are some examples of office managed referrals. So of course we have some majors of drug, tobacco, alcohol, dangerous weapons. Oh, yep. I feel like you should take that.
I got you.
Just watch when she hits her little button.
Yep.
Sorry, can't do 2 things. Yeah, so I apologize. So, disobedience, defiance, destruction of school property, bullying, harassment, threats, detrimental behavior, fighting, these are just some examples of use of language, And also repeated teacher handled behaviors may come up as an office referral. Now it's like, I can get serious and we have a conversation. So top 5 types of office managed incidents. So again, these are the ones where students are being with an administrator on something that happened. So overall for the district, you can see these are our top 5. We've got abusive language, disruptive, insubordination, physical aggression, and truancy attendance. For elementary, we have abusive, inappropriate language, disrespect, disruptive behavior, physical aggression, and threat. For middle school, abusive language, disruptive behavior, insubordination, physical aggression, truancy attendance. And then high school, abusive, inappropriate language, disruptive behavior, fighting, disruptive behavior, and that is 2 in a row, so I'm not sure why that is.
There are multiple categories.
Oh,
under
thank you,
disruptive.
thank you.
What was the answer to your question?
Yeah.
Disruptive behavior has multiple pieces to it, so it's the overall category, but there are smaller pieces inside of disruptive behavior in our matrix where, depending on what type of disruptive behavior it is, that's what gets pinged the most.
So disruptive behavior, as it's evidenced up there, is not actually just a repeat, it's 2 different types of
Correct,
disruptive
yes.
behavior.
I can
Okay.
look those up quickly.
All right, thanks.
Also for clarification, as you look at each of these numbers that are reported in all the bar graphs, these aren't individual students, they're individual incidents. And so a single student might be responsible for multiple numbers. So just another way just to know and interpret the data.
Appreciate that, thank you. Okay, so top 5 discipline actions for office managed referrals. So these are the things that happen, so that we have again the district overall. And then elementary, middle, and high.
Patty, would you mind reading those just for those that are, because
Absolutely.
people may not be able to read them from the audience.
So for overall, we have conference with student. We have 2 deferred expulsion and 2 for referral for expulsion, detention, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. For elementary, so out of the 920 now, for elementary, 138 of those was in-school suspension, 82 was loss of privileges, 242 were out-of-school suspensions, and 49 were removed from classrooms. And then in middle school, we have conference with students, expulsions, detention, in-school suspension at 543, out of school at 388. And then referred for expulsion. And then for high school, we have the conference with student, in-school suspension, loss of privileges, and then out-of-school suspension at 191.
And just for also clarification, expulsion obviously is the highest level. Those are legally and statutorily defined, right? So that's not there are very specific reasons, and they are defined in law and statute as to why or how you can expel a student.
So if you were to look at the data that you have, you don't have to be specific, but you could look at the data and find out that there's just a handful of schools that are doing a lot of out-of-school suspension at the elementary level. And it could just be okay.
Yes, so, in fact, every school leadership team in Thompson School District went through a whole data review, and they have all of this for their context. So there was a whole data protocol with not only the principal, but the leadership team of every school looking at this data, just like this, looking at they can look at, are particular students making most of them? Or what is this? Like they can really dig down, and expectations is to really look at also our student groups, just like this, to say, where do we need to respond? What are some strategies that we are going to do? What are we going to tighten up? And then, of course, every department in learning services is also engaged in this work.
And
Because
is
we
that-
all love it.
Is that recently happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Like,
30,
July 31st.
July 31st.
they all were together and, awesome.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll tell you, kudos and shout out to all of those leadership teams. They're taking it very seriously,
Good.
and they're also very pumped about the strategies they're putting into place. It was amazing work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one question, just
Yes.
overall? Do we have a sense that most of the stuff is getting in here and getting in here the way we want it to be overall this year? Cause I know that's been a challenge with that one system, right?
Yes, this is the cleanest our data has been, and in fact, 2 of my staff members were asked by CDE to be exemplars for this year, and so they're actually, working with the state of Colorado and how to show it. So we have our 2 student information systems, both Infinite Campus and EduClimber, working together. So it isn't only on the student side of the house, it's also on the teacher side of the house. So you can drill down to specific teachers if there needs to be conversations from administrator to teacher on if there would be a significant number of behavior incidents coming from that. And so it isn't just our disaggregated populations for the student side, it's how can we better possibly coach our teachers with helping them support behavior strategies in the classroom as well.
At the school level, it can also be looked at by, the principal administratively. Is there, are there certain schools that suspend more? Are there certain, so it's beyond the classroom level. We also look at it at the school and quite honestly the district level, because there are things that come up to this level as well. So yes, we're looking at it from all directions, not just classroom, but I think building level and district level too.
Thank you. And it's very easy and quick to pull this data now. And you can look at both academic and behavioral outcomes together. It is all right there in the hands of our practitioners to really look at those patterns with the expectation of looking at it and then responding. So these are the incident types that resulted in state reportable discipline, and it's together with in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and expulsion. So we took out just the office referrals and just looked at our top 5. And then this is our top locations that resulted in state reportable discipline. Again, classroom, same. And this one is, I'm gonna kind of talk through this one. So this is looking at some of our student groups that we report on, including in-school, out-of-school, and expulsions. So when we're looking at this data, we are also looking at, is it disproportional to the number of students that we have? So first of all, let's do the top 3 grades. So when we look at the office referral or the majors, our top 3 grades, we don't have first and second, which is, that should be a thing. But we do have that 7th, 8th, and 6th.
Yeah.
For gender, we have basically 50-50 split.
Yeah, so way off still.
So when we're looking at,
In fact, it looks like we got even worse on that data point than what I've ever seen before.
IEP status. So, this means that students, for the state reportables, 69% of the students don't have an IEP, 31% do. But the problem when we have 13.6% of our population in special education. So 13.6% of our students in special education are receiving 31% of our state reportable most exclusionary practices.
Would you repeat that, what you just said, please,
Yeah.
Patty?
So if we're looking at IEP status.
Yeah.
So of all of our state reportables, all of our most exclusionary practices, 69% of our students do not have an IEP. 31% do. But out of our whole population, only 13.6% of our students have IEPs. So although we only have 13.6 of our students with IEPs, they make up 30% of the in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions.
Thank you.
Now remember, this particular student could have more than one. So a student could be in there multiple times, receiving multiple suspensions, and they're counted multiple times. But still, that is concerning because we have a pretty big gap. Now for race and ethnicity, and we just pulled this. So for the total of last year, you can see that our students who are white received 63% of the in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions. 30% are considered Hispanic and Latino. 5% are 2 or more races, and 2% are our students who identify Black, African American. So when we look at that, I'm looking at, do we have some disproportionality? So last year, as the state reports, we had 69.5% of our students reporting as white, identifying as white. And we had 23.2% of our students reporting as Hispanic Latino. So we do have some overrepresentation there. With 2 or more races, we were at 4.5. And then another area, even though it's a smaller population, 0.9% of our students identify as Black, although they are receiving 2% of our total for in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions.
Which really says that that's double the amount that it should be proportionally, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know, that's still concerning, but we have closed that gap.
We're closing gaps.
A deeper data analysis, and even going back to either, gender and IEP status, if we looked at recidivism, as if we looked at the same student with like getting multiple state reportable consequences, that would give you a more accurate representation, because right now we're looking at aggregate, we're looking at every incident, and while obviously we don't want a student to offend multiple times or what have you, that is what's happening in all these cases. How it shifts the data, we would have to do a deeper analysis on, but I think that would be something that I would like us to look at, just to
Yes, and we can do things with the recidivism. So what we do is, if we start seeing this pattern, we need to be calling an IEP meeting to talk through that before it gets so far, and just see what other supports can we do for that student. Or if we're seeing, like, it's all with our problem-solving process and our MTSS processes, we really want to be able to provide support for those students who are moving up that quickly, so that isn't a problem. Okay, so for trends, here's some good news. We all like good news, right? So for 23-24, our in-school suspensions went from 897 total to 774 from last year to this year. And for our out-of-school suspensions, it went from 1,027 to 923. So we are decreasing. What I would like to probably look at next would be a percentage of our population, which we do have, but it's not on this data, right? Because we do have some students who our population has decreased a bit, but it was like, we looked at 14,535 at the time we was reported of students. So we do see some trending going down, and that is good news. If we look at IEP status, we are pretty flat when it comes to how we are doing for in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension. One of the pieces, though, that I will say is the other report that we rely on for our students with IEPs is we look at our compliance report from the state. And actually, we were not, we were doing pretty, and Laszlo can speak to this, we were doing pretty good in terms of the percent of our students that had in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions compared to the state. It was actually
Way better.
way better.
Yeah, I
So,
remember that.
it's kind of, you gotta look at that compared to the state and then look at our trends.
I'd like us to be even better than that,
Yes,
right?
we do, but,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
compared to the state, we're actually in pretty.
We're doing the work, for sure. I can see that.
And then this one is a little bit hard to read, and it is also based on numbers, but this is comparing our, student race ethnicity for in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and expulsion. So the green is in-school suspension, and the blue is out-of-school suspension, and then you can look at those bars, across the 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, if that makes sense. So we are decreasing, going in the right trend direction compared to last year. Okay, and now I am going to pass it over to Joe. Would you like?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
I might be able to, we'll see. Thank you so much, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, for having me tonight. I'm gonna start with some good news, because my topic is usually not great. So we'll start with some good news. This is actually First Responder Day at Winona Elementary. So that is what we were doing there today. This was an opportunity for students to come out and look through some of the vehicles and services that are provided to them in the community. The black truck on the left is actually Sergeant Bartness. He's over here. He was teaching kids how to be drone pilots. It was very cool because he's on the drone team. So just a huge thank you to Sergeant Bartness and Lieutenant Jacobson, who are here. Loveland PD has been amazing in focusing more on those prevention activities and building those relationships with our students at a younger age. So they've been great. So just want to start with that. Also, too, they are here for questions as well. They're in the back. Should the board have questions for law enforcement specific or co-response specific, there's a Dr. Megan Kaczynski's here as well for co-responder supervision. The county apologizes, but I believe there's a flash flood warning that all of us were made aware of, and they are working on that. So they apologize for not being here. A couple quick updates. The school resource officer IGAs were signed by the board earlier this year. We're continuing to implement the training that is identified in those documents with both agencies, actually all three agencies with Johnstown PD as well. We have quarterly meetings, myself and Todd, with the SRO leadership to talk about best practices and review data as it's going along, so we don't get surprised at the end of the year. And then actually next week, we have our first one of the biannual meeting with our senior leadership, which is Dr. Schaefer, a couple identified members of the cabinet, and usually the Sheriff Fan and Chief Duran join as well, just to have a good conversation about what is needed and what best practices we can implement in Thompson to support our students. And then Sergeant Cook and Sergeant Bartness and I usually sit down once a week and we review calls for service and cases that are ongoing with LCSO and SLPD. So the partnership is really strong, and it's great to have those candid conversations of what we need to do to keep our students safe. Here are a few focus areas that are not great, but there is currently an increased level of gang activity in northern Colorado. We have partnered with Loveland Police Department and LCSO to make sure that we're identifying those trends should they occur in our buildings, and we're working in partnership together to make sure that those things are addressed in our buildings out of safety. But also in support too to help the students or family work through that process as well. We have a great partnership I've spoken to already where there are certain cases that are potentially high level that I cannot speak about in a public setting, but if the board would like further clarification, we could potentially have discussion in executive session. But we work together on those cases. Those usually involve crimes of violence, and I'm happy to say most of the time they do not happen on school grounds, so that's a good thing. It's just more of an awareness and a partnership to make sure that our buildings are safe. We have, and you'll see some data later on in our presentation that talks about our threat assessment process, and there's some pretty major disparities in our data there. So we were fortunate to get some different training and some certifications, and partnering with Learning Services, which we'll talk about later, of how we're going to alter that a little bit to bring some support to the student earlier, so we don't have that. So we're excited to talk about that here in a little bit. And then, as Todd alluded to in an earlier presentation, our further integration into our emergency management for community level response. Our partnership with Larimer County Emergency Management is awesome right now, and in this recently with the Alexander Mountain Fire, we were able to get information that could impact our district in a quick way. So we're just going to continue to increase that partnership and understanding of work. Here are some other trainings that I was speaking about. The first one was very exciting. We had our first advanced safety drill. Huge shout out once again to Loveland Police Department as they partnered with us in it, and the members of our drill planning team. We had 161 staff members attend, and that was across all levels of Thompson School District. It was not specific to APT staff or anything like that. It was very conference style in the beginning, where you can see some of the courses that they were able to attend and gain more understanding on. There's one of our staff members attending Stop the Bleed training. So all of them walked out of there with a certificate for that, which was pretty exciting. And then at the end of that, we actually simulated gunfire in a building. And the staff was asked to respond to that and to really get that as close as we can with safety, that reward experience. Over the summer, I attended a master trainer certification in threat assessment in Chicago. So I'm able to provide a level of certification now to all staff members within Thompson. I'm actively working with our professional development department to see how we can, there's various levels of the certification, but bring those levels of certification to all staff as part of a professional development process, which once again, we're hoping can help with the overall process of what Patty and I will talk about later. We've built our building crisis team meetings. So each building has a crisis team that is developed as part of their prepare plan. And myself or our safety manager, John Summers, meets with them about once a month. We talk about drill planning, trends in their building, and how we can better support them. There's a couple new things that are coming into Thompson. The first one is our canine protocol. These are canines that are run and facilitated by Larimer County Sheriff and Loveland Police Department. They are not narcotic dogs, and they do not do bite work. They are Labradors, and the only thing that they smell are explosives, firearms, ammunition. So they'll be in our buildings off and on through partnership with the school administration to make sure that those things are not making their way onto school grounds. We're going to continue to plan another advanced safety drill day to hopefully get more staff. Sorry, I just staff there. We're not going to bring students in. And then there's kind of an exciting partnership that we have with staff notification. And it's two pieces. The first one is LETA, so the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority. All staff across all of Thompson School District is able to sign up now. And what it is it's a text messaging system that goes out. So in case you can't hear the intercom or something to that nature, you'll get a text message. And the very cool part about it is that it keeps texting you until you respond to it. So that's kind of a nice feature, and that's open to any staff member within Thompson School District. And then Kelly Sain and I are working on a VV process. So she would have to give you way more than I can on this, but in essence, it's a Fire Stick type device that goes into the back of a TV, but we can pair it with an emergency management suite. So in theory, Loveland Police, Larimer County Sheriff, or our dispatch center, or a principal or anybody could hit a click of a mouse or a button on their phone and put the entire building into lockdown, where it'll actually turn on and off TV and give instructions of what to do, and at the same time interface with the intercom system as well.
So it provides real-time alerts. You can direct it into a single classroom, a wing, an entire building, and it would be any alert from fire to intruder on campus or to whatever. Every TV in the district, so every school building as well as here in the district office will have this. It's called Vivi. I don't know, Kelly, if you have anything more to add.
We're just excited about the collaboration, so that it can give us an additional visual representation. And if a teacher is conducting something in their classroom, it will interrupt whatever's happening in the classroom. So if there's a video or anything like that that's going on, and it will give them that visual representation, which is a wonderful collaboration between us.
And if the TV is off, it comes on. So it doesn't even have to be in use, it will automatically. We will have it, so it was piloted at Mountain View, they loved it. Right now, we are inviting schools to jump on, some are like in a hurry to get it. I think our target is by January, 100% of the district will have it. Ish.
I think we're still talking that through about how it all connects with Navigate 360.
Okay.
But we can, we want to make sure that we're connected with all the different partners and go forward. But it's an exciting new opportunity.
So yeah, we're piloting it in a few schools right now, as Dr. Schaefer alluded to. We're using that information from the pilot to make sure that we can make an informed decision and informed practice to get it into all of our schools. But please rest assured, it is a priority for us. Here is our current SRO staffing. There are 8 SROs through Loveland Police Department with 1 clinician and an SRO sergeant. And then Larimer County Sheriff has 3 SROs, a clinician, and then 1 sergeant who, the way that their units sit, they oversee SROs and co-response. So that's Sergeant Cook. Here's some trends. Unfortunately, I wanted to do year versus just the semester, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't able to give a full year in 2020 and 2021. We started off this program with 365 citations, which was very high, and we have worked down now to 145, and yes, it was 145 for 2 years in a row. That is not an error. I know, Stu, that was, I think, a question that you had in one of your questions previously. Overall, if we look at the 5-year trend, we're at a 61% reduction in citations within Thompson School District.
Is it, again, true that a single student could receive multiple citations, so it's not necessarily 145 students, it's the number of citations?
Correct, absolutely.
I mean, that'd be a lot of citations for one person, but,
Yes.
It
would be a lot. Absolutely, so thank you, Dr. Schaefer, for alluding to that. That is something I was gonna bring up, is yes. So this could represent a couple students receiving multiple criminal charges. Due to the privacy of the student, I did not want to outline it in that way in a public setting. As you can see here, this is specific to Loveland Police Department. The race and ethnicity, for the most part, is very close to our district demographics. We're a little high in our students who identify as Black or African American, but once again, that could be because one person received multiple citations versus multiple students. So our gender is 61% male, 39% female. There were no students who, at least and this is all directly from Loveland Police, who identify as non-binary, that received a criminal citation. Types of incidents, our top 3, as you can see, are marijuana, disorderly conduct, and vaping tobacco. Disorderly conduct is usually the SRO's way of doing, versus charging them with assault. They charge with, it's a fight. So it's just a little bit way that they use some of that discretion to help the student receive maybe some support and some understanding versus jumping that to the highest level of enforcement. There is a little bit higher, as you can see in our vaping has jumped up. We have piloted, based off of the request from the high schools, some vape detectors. They are very effective, and we saw quite a jump in that. Please remember that there is still the second chance where a student will not receive a citation until after their 3rd offense.
So when do we put those in?
They were in all last semester. Had 'em. So we did a major bathroom group in each high school to pilot it, and we're going to increase kind of each year, determine where next, and keep installing. But they were I would say a big hit by the school admin to just be able to help manage that issue.
So that is specific to LPD. Here's some information that is captured on LCSO's slide that is not captured on LPD, and I'll talk a little bit about that whole data process here in a minute. Out of those citations, 122 times the officer received that information or that referral from Thompson School District staff. So 84% of the time. 5% was from students, 2.7% was radio dispatched by LPD, 3.4% was by parents and guardians, and 4.1% was from a traffic offense, usually during lunch. Some trends is marijuana in previous years was not listed as a top 3, and that's kind of made a little comeback. So we're definitely monitoring that. And then we saw a little bit more trends in some drugs that are higher schedule. So various things, acid, LSD, things of that nature that we're making a little bit of
So
impact.
if I interpret this correctly, so with our SROs, there were no citations, like, so nothing was SRO initiated, everything was referred to the SRO?
Yes.
100%.
Minus the traffic offense is in, so a traffic offense is officer observed, but there were no times that an officer that was walking down a hallway and just said, oh, okay, here you go. So that's the information that I was provided. And Sarge, you can provide more intel on that if the board would like.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. This is Larimer County Sheriff's data. So student contact type, you can see a little bit more information there about when that student was considered a suspect in their interaction, when they were mentoring, when that student was classified as a victim through the criminal investigation process, or a witness. Our sex is still heavy on the male side. There is a little bit there for the multiple students. I believe that is their, I wish they were here, how they identify non-binary. Race and ethnicity, I would be very curious to see specific to Berthoud, in the town of Berthoud, because that is the primary area that they serve. That is the demographics. I don't want to say that we are either close or not close, because I don't know the Berthoud specific demographics, so I don't want to speak to that. And there's a little bit more information of how SROs are notified. They had 38 total contacts with 8 citations. What was interesting was the top 3 for Larimer County Sheriff was theft, tobacco vaping, and harassment. So very different than LPD. One of the things I just want to talk about briefly is, as you can see, it's nice that they're using a similar system in Google, but it's not 100% the same. So it's a huge ongoing project right now, and Lieutenant Jacobson can speak to it more if the board would like, where we're trying to get Fort Collins PD, Loveland PD, Larimer County Sheriff, Johnstown PD, all as like a regional SRO data group where we could just click Thompson Schools or Booter, so we could pull that real-time data, we can see trends, we can see how we compare to other school districts. As you can imagine, that's quite the lift. But that is a huge project for us, and we are actively having those conversations to make sure that the data is more similar moving forward.
Okay, Safe to Tell's on the LCSO one, but it wasn't on LPD. Obviously, we had Safe to Tell. Would that show up as the dispatch?
I think that would show up as referred to by staff.
Okay.
Is that correct, Sarge?
Yeah, it'd be a combination of both dispatch and school.
Okay, thank you.
All right, here's our co-responder update, and we'll talk a bit more about data. Since program inception, we are at 526 calls for service. Just this last year, we were at 344 contacts. They're very busy. Here's a little bit of what that looks like as their call type. A big project for us is, just a quick example, is if you see the yellow in disposition where it says 16.9% is case consultation, what does that mean? What are you consulting with school mental health staff about? What are the areas that we need to help our school staff to where maybe that consultation isn't needed or isn't needed? Those are active conversations Patty and I are having. I believe in the next 2 weeks, Patty actually has a meeting with them to have that conversation and to really kind of start diving deep into this. To be quite candid, this was, I don't think we were expecting 344 calls. So to now go, oh, we need to really start digging into this data to find out more of the why versus just the basic and the high level. High school was our biggest area of call type, and then about split half and half on middle school and elementary. And then as you can read the call types, just want to give a huge shout out once again to Loveland Police, Larimer County Sheriff, and Summit Stone Health Partners for partnering with us in this endeavor as we continue to move this program forward.
Would the consultation be the home stuff? Because they do wraparound.
It very much could be.
Because then that would be like the family and not the kid.
Absolutely, and that's something that we would want to know. And so that's a great example. Thank you for that. Here's a date range. I know it's kind of a busy slide, but it's interesting where we see these little upticks. What I found was interesting was the spring semester seems to be busier than the fall semester. So it's just kind of interesting to see those trends, and I'm just kind of thankful now that we've almost had 2 years of this. so we can start building more of an understanding of what this program is doing and what it can do, and where we need to kind of help guide it. All right, so here's our threat assessments and safety plans. They are not broken down by school, but they are broken down by level of school. We had 85 safety plans in high school with 31 threat screens and 8 full threat assessments. Elementary was 47 safety plans with 33 threat screens and 6 full assessments. And here's kind of where things get a little, maybe where they also maybe overlay with some of the data that we saw earlier. There are 109 threat screens at the middle school K-8 level with 96 safety plans and 16 full assessments. One of the areas that we focus in, and the SROs are actually now part of this, is the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, which is a group of threat assessment professionals where we share best practices, things of that nature. So bringing the SRO cadre into that practice as well. Speaking as a former law enforcement officer, you don't get a lot of training in that part. So it's just nice to bring that factor into our districts.
And threat screens self and others, right?
Yes. Oh, no. So, well, yes. If it is self, then we stop and we refer to the school counselor to start the SRA process.
Okay, thank you.
Total, we have 228 safety plans in Thompson schools. We had 173 threat screens and 30 full assessments. And this is where me and Patty are going to start to have a conversation. We have a major concern where 37% of the threat screens involved a student with an IEP and 40% involved a student with an IEP for a full team threat assessment. So our plan, and I'll let Patty talk about it, is what we've actually done is, so previously the threat screen was a simple process of 13 essential questions identified by the Secret Service to go through that. Staff will still do that, but before it comes to John and myself, we actually, through Navigate 360, they have what's called the CSTAG, which is a nationally recognized process, and it's all documented online. So the best part is we can document the due process. It is shared specific with school teams, and we've implemented a process now where before we go to full team threat assessment, an ESS staff member or coordinator has to be now included in that conversation, and other systems of supports within our district. The purpose of that is in threat assessment, we look for predatory behavior versus effective behavior, which is more of what the district and students with special needs, a typical behavior of juveniles would be. My office, once again, is looking for more of that predatory behavior. So really building up the training for those building level teams, of course with safety and security representation, but to help, well, to quite frank, to fix that and to help those numbers go down immensely and immediately. So we're working through that process. But do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I think you said it perfectly, and we also talked about doing some studying on the individuals who may have done threat assessments, and also studying some kids that we are seeing through crisis response, to kind of dig into that and then continue partnerships together, working together with both systems to help students.
And I really wanted to finish with a positive. I covered some of the other nice things that we're doing already earlier, but I do want to give a shout out specific to Thompson Valley High School, Loveland Police, Loveland Fire Rescue Authority, and Thompson Valley EMS. We are piloting a first responder class at Thompson School District. I have just now started to get some of the curriculum that is coming through, and quite frankly, it's awesome. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for our students. I think they're very much going to enjoy it. So I just want to give a huge shout out to them, and this partnership's going really, really well. So other than that, and then last one is continued educational events. In September, we are hosting a fentanyl awareness event at Thompson Valley High School in partnership once again with Loveland Police Department, where there will be multiple stakeholders throughout our community to talk through substance abuse and prevention, things like that. So I can provide more information.
We're gonna have resources?
Yes, I have a flyer I can send you.
No, I meant like, are we handing out resources?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And then Thompson, I know, will have its own table. I reached out to Patty and Shannon and Dr. Guffels about that today. Anything else on the slide?
I think discussing a little bit more about the increased partnerships in crisis response and families. We do know that there are some students who may have a crisis type of response, And if we have a pattern of that, what we really wanna do, if a student has a plan, an IEP plan, it's really about, let's talk about that in the meeting. If this is if this student is triggered and emotional regulation is a goal, and there might be a crisis, then let's bring parents together to say, this may happen, and we're gonna collaborate with this great resource to keep your child safe and other people safe, and this is how it goes. So we're really gonna be going side by side with our parents and using this resource more effectively, and we are very excited about that partnership. A couple other things that we're doing is Character Strong is like classic character education, and it's from K through 8, and it's a strong resource, very easy to use, not time intensive, and we're teaching things about being kind, emotional regulation, learner behaviors, what is it like and expected to be a learner in a classroom. And then there's also an anti-bullying strand. So we are ensuring that we are teaching what bullying is and what we will do to respond versus a Talon versus telling. And all elementary and middle schools were like, yes, could we please use that resource to have some baseline instruction that will then be embedded and reinforced throughout the day with that strong academic content. Because we need lots of time for that as well too. So it's sort of a win-win piece. The next is, so we did a Tier 2 behavior support program for all K-8 and middle schools with a behavior coach. And so our Jen Chadwick is designing a very research-strong based program that will be seamless across all schools, and it'll be similar to a check-in, check-out program. And so we will actually now have that layer for students in the, you saw our data, so we're targeting specific because we have the highest suspensions. So we're really going to be looking at that and seeing what can we do to keep those down with mentoring, with coaching, and then getting students back into the school. So we will look and see how that is working for our schools.
I do wanna interject
And we
here.
have
We are
no time.
running-
Sorry.
We are out of time, but I do.
I will stop.
But these, the highlighted things here on this slide are next steps that we are doing in the system that we certainly can weave
Yes.
into any question answers that we have for you. So I wanna pause here and see what types of questions or dialogue that you would like to have with us.
Questions that have popped up?
Which way are we starting?
Yes, do you have one? Well, I'm gonna start with Nancy, I think is where I left off, and then we'll go around. Any-
I wrote down so many things. On one of them is, on one of the graphs, maybe page 8. It looked like, and again, I know it was just the top one, so it might not be all the numbers. But I just did some quick maths, and so it looked like on elementary school, 10% of what was in the graph, there were actual conferences meeting with parents. Middle school, it showed none. And then high school, it showed 37%. So to me, it seems a little curious in that if the elementary school behavior is really high, one would think that it'd be a higher parent, student, teacher, or administrator meeting than what I saw for the high school and then for middle school. And I'm sorry, it's probably page 8.
It is slide 8.
No, it's back farther.
Oh, is it?
It's way
Yes,
back there.
it's slide,
So
yeah, slide 8.
these are, to clarify that side of it, this is if a parent comes in and meets with, all students are still called, they receive a phone call and can speak to the parent over the phone, and so there is that partnership of next steps. Sometimes it's when the parent has to come in and actually have a conference.
Right, so it's a
with the-
scheduled meeting, right? So again, I still just, when you see the high number of elementary, I mean, just intuitively, I would think that we'd have more scheduled meeting with parents so that we can nip it on the front end before it becomes something these guys have to deal with too much.
Parenting partnerships is critical before working together. Some teachers may also put loss of privileges, and still, because it's another thing besides parent contact, they might put that, they will always have a conversation with a parent in what they did. So that's kind of a little confusing too.
And then I'll ask the second question, and then I'll wait till everyone goes around. So you were talking about that the best place for the kids to be is in the classroom, which yes, that's where they learn. But my question is about understanding that, how do we at the same time mitigate the impact, the negative impact on the kids who are in the classroom who want to learn, and can't always focus on that, and neither can their teachers because there's some chaos happening. How do we mitigate that negative impact?
That's a great question. So a couple of things that we're working on with continuous improvement teams is first that strong sense of belonging for all kids. And we're going heavy on that, so every child feels welcomed and like they belong and they have strong relationships with their teachers. Next move is co-created classroom agreements. So all of the students in the classroom, and this is kindergarten through 12th grade, they are agreeing to what they feel like is the most important thing to be learners in the classroom. And students are also helping remind kids about that. And then the next part is, and then what if that contract is broken? And what if that contract, that classroom agreement is broken often? And so we are tasking our schools and our school teams to really have that lined out so students are very aware and our parents are aware of this is how it goes. We have this beautiful classroom-made community where everyone wants to be there, and yep, there are steps if you continue to break that agreement. You may be visiting with a person, a counselor, an administrator to go through some questions like what are you doing, how are you going to get back, and how are you going to prepare, and then they are coming back. So every school is working on that and having a very strong documented process on what they do when a student is struggling for those agreements. And then again, if a student continues, then that's where we need to call a student problem solving team and really get into what interventions do we need to have in place and what skills does that student need to have to be more successful in the classroom.
Are we, so that to help facilitate, whether they're kindergartner or 12th grade, allowing them to participate in the creation of that agreement and the consequence? Because I think that's where you really get ownership and buy-in.
Yes.
They almost have to.
Yes.
In order for them to understand it, they have to be.
It's gotta be in there, the way they think.
And then it's like collective, you don't, like, we're not disrupting this. We have great relationship with teachers. We have business to do, and like, we're gonna co-own it together. Mm-hmm. And then usually if you have those strong things, kids are like, ooh, I wanna get back in there. So, yeah. Thank you for that question.
Alexandra, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So my first question is about, so for the teacher handled incidents or behaviors, is there like specific criteria that need to be met in order for it to be something that's like actually entered into this data system versus like they just do it and don't enter it anywhere?
Another great question. Yes, so to ensure that we have like a common understanding, we have a matrix that we go with really what are your typical classroom handled behaviors and what are those office managed behaviors and what are even more of the category of going up to suspendables and those kinds of things. So we have a framework, if you will, or levels for that. And then I was just looking at two great ones, Carey Martin and Turner Middle School. They have it laid out, so they talk about the whole process of what, like how you redirect, how you put in some interventions, how you support, and then when does it go to when we're going to enter that data to look at it. It's all lined out so that all staff members really understand what we put in and for why. So So we're not overdoing it, but we're also collecting that data to really be that proactive piece for our system. And that's what the majors as well too, or the office handled. Great question.
Did you have another one?
Yeah, can I ask
Okay.
another one? Okay, so back at one slide up on, sort of on slide 7, is I'm curious why, if you know, there are so many fewer incidents reported at high school than other grade levels.
That's a puzzler, isn't it?
And I don't
noticed that
imagine
as well,
it's because
too.
high schoolers are
Did you know?
Yes, it's you, yes.
Maria is speaking from experience. I could be speaking from experience. That is a compelling question that and this is like just the beginning, right? So then you just go in and look for those answers. But yes, it was interesting, and the number of suspensions, frankly, were lower
Right.
than elementary,
It was,
right?
but then
Yeah.
it was higher. Then that was what I thought was interesting. Like, yeah, so there for teacher handled behaviors in high school there were 374, but for office referrals there were 828. So
Yes.
are they just like referring more to the office because they don't want to deal with it, or are they doing worse things so they have to refer them to the office, or I don't know. I'm curious.
Those are the questions.
Yeah.
They're taller, so they refer them more often.
Maybe we can see them more.
Well,
Really?
one
Each
of
high school
our
has a dean of students as well.
Yep.
And so sometimes that is the piece, but it also is the, higher level incidents taking place.
It would be very typical for it to be developmentally, expected to be developmentally appropriate, that the disruptive behaviors that younger children are engaging in could be handled at the teacher level, and the older children may not be able to be handled at the teacher level, so that's not unexpected to me. I also would say that another possible consideration here is that, remember, this is our, as Carrie was saying, the cleanest year of data that we've had with our new systems, and it's the first full year of that. So you might also be seeing which levels are more compliant, a little bit too, with new protocols. I mean, there could be a number of factors in there. I totally agree with Patty that it does bring up really great questions that we need to keep following up on.
Other dimensions could be in an elementary school, typically a student will see far fewer teachers than in a high school where you might see 7 or 8 teachers. I also was just wondering if a substitute or guest teacher refers, would that come up as an office referred to the office? We tend to have, I'm not saying that substitutes over-report versus classroom teachers, but there are more substitutes and guest teachers, and oftentimes they may not handle situations the same as like a classroom teacher where there's an existing relationship.
I have a question about the planning that the schools have worked on, because this came out in a conversation I had, and I even brought it up at the retreat, is kids leave, elementary in particular, leave their classrooms, walk down to PE, music, and art, and the teacher down there has no idea what has exploded in the classroom and have no way to really find out what was going on. So this kid comes in and he's raging at that point in time, and the classroom teacher drops him off, and that art teacher or music teacher has no clue on what happened that escalated, and how do we work around that, because that's putting everybody in a scary situation as far as
I love this question as well. So when we were working with continuous improvement teams, with leadership teams, I was like literally sitting in a conversation about how they are lifting the warm welcomes, the classroom agreements, and standard practices across the whole school about how they're going to intervene and what will be office managed, what will be classroom managed. And the specials teachers were represented at this particular table, and they were talking about how they're going to be communicating with the teacher and how we're going to have some common expectations. And so moving forward, I think just even working on that school-wide work will be super supportive in helping the teachers collaborate. But of course, with best practice, if a student is really struggling, they should probably regulate before they go into a special, just
You
for
would hope so.
themselves as well as for
Yeah.
their success in the specials.
That interferes with my planning time.
Yes, that's why we have backups to the
Yeah.
backups, right? Yeah, for sure.
Amy, do you have a question?
No, I was actually curious about the substitute, the question that Mark sort of already answered, and just thank you very much. This was a very robust presentation, so appreciate it.
Stu?
I do. I don't know that we necessarily, Lorelei, need to go back to this slide. Hopefully you'll know from my explanation which slide I'm talking about. I believe the title of the slide was something like how we use teacher-handled data collection, and there were 4 different examples given. Were they examples, or are they the 4 that are most commonly seen or occurring?
Totally just examples.
They're just
Of how
examples.
when we look at all of those factors, location, time of day, month, students, what information you can get to really be proactive and preventative. So we don't have so many referrals.
All right.
Just examples.
Then a couple slides after that was one that talked about conferences after student misbehavior. I'm curious as to why middle and high school have a teacher-student conference. I may be kind of keying in on Nancy's earlier question. So why do middle and high school have a teacher-student conference and elementary has a parent-guardian conference? And what I wondered is the student not part of an elementary conference dealing with the student's behavior? Because the slide didn't say that.
Yeah, that is a great question. You sure jump in, thank you.
So
Oh, you're here.
the original intention of those 2 different choices would be the difference between a conference that occurs with the classroom teacher versus a conference with some other staff member. As we can see in the data, we don't think people are understanding that. And so we really probably need to go back and clean it up and have just the conference one and not delineate between different staff members because we think it's causing some confusion. That's how I would answer your question. Carrie, would you agree?
And again, these are just the top 3. It isn't that we don't
Sure.
have that as an option. We're just looking at the top 3 in each of the categories right now.
Would elementary children probably be part of a behavior conference with a parent or guardian present?
I hope so.
I would
Yes.
hope so.
Oh, I would hope so too.
Yeah.
Why would you have a
Yes.
conference without having the kid there?
Yeah.
Okay, that takes care of that one. Let's see. I have kind of an overarching question. Looking at the data, comparing middle school, high school, and elementary, it appears to me now, and it appeared to me when I looked at the data, that the most serious behavior problems happen at the middle school level. Both in terms of frequency and perhaps nature of the misbehavior. How are we, or what are we doing, or are we doing anything to try to address behavior at the middle school level, since your nods are telling me that you're agreeing with what I'm saying in regard to the frequency and the nature of the behavior? Do we have a plan that is particularly addressing middle school misbehavior?
And I might throw that to Theo if he would like to.
So I think it goes back to what you said earlier. So through the continuous improvement team work, we all had similar conversations with our admin team that had teacher representatives on that on July the 30th and 31st. And it really centered around how do we do more of that sense of belonging work across our schools. And so one of the things that I asked our principals to do, and Dr. Schaefer's modeled this for about 6 years now, is he has a high school student advisory, middle school student advisory, and elementary student advisory group. But we recognize that we're at the time where we really need to pull the students in more at the middle school level and high school level to really have deeper conversations about what do they need to see differently in order to help them better build a sense of belonging within the school, but not just within the school, but within their classrooms, between their teachers, and then between student-to-student relationships as well. And so during our retreat on July the 19th, I had an opportunity to talk to all of our secondary administrators about that specific conversation. And so I'm expecting through to the fact that they're gonna be bringing more of their students to help them problem solve while we're seeing the gaps that we're seeing within our sense of belonging data, our climate survey data, and then also some of our gaps in our instruction, like where do we need to really focus our efforts school to school. And so that's how I think we'll be able to better address that in the future. Yes, please.
Patty also mentioned, briefly, right towards the end, that we are, adding a behavior coach to all of our middle schools and K-8s. Our SEL behavior, coordinator, Jen Chadwick, is leading that training. They are actually working on planning the training today, and it's going to include restorative practices, check-in, check-out, CPI, love and logic, you know, all of the things you would want somebody to all the skills that you would want somebody to have to be able to assist students with this type of things that we're seeing, so both preventing and responding to that. So that is a new program that is starting up, and our team is gonna help with supplies and training and support to make sure that that is evidence-based best practice work. And then I would also add that our suicide screening data also shows the same uptick in middle schools, and that's one of the reasons that we were awarded the school health professional grant to provide behavioral health interventionists at our middle schools. And so all students at our middle schools have access at no cost to small group or individual therapy with their parents' permission. We're trying to come at that from, so those are just two things that are happening right now that are getting at some of what you're bringing up about our concerns for middle school. And I would also add, as a previous middle school teacher, that, you know, we know that middle school is a hard time, right? And then we think about the ongoing effects of COVID, you know, and what happened to our kiddos several years ago. So we have to keep asking ourselves what they need, and asking those questions is what's led to us adding these new supports in for our middle school students and staff and families.
And I just wanna add, like, so our data with the middle schools is no different than our surrounding districts when it comes to middle schools, and it's technically across the country. This is the developmental stage of our kids to where they typically make choices based on how they feel, and they're not necessarily processing through, like, what's gonna be the result of my action. And so, I'm glad you brought up all the different mental health supports and services, but this is that developmental stage where they make some good choices in some cases and then some bad choices in other cases.
And I'll just close my comments by saying, at some point, I would appreciate seeing a copy of the middle school plan. I'd like to know what the various components are that the district is either using or anticipating to use to address what I see as the most serious problem in terms of a grade level or a grade range. So I would appreciate seeing the plan when it's developed and created. Okay?
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Dawn, question?
Just a little bit about parent education, adult education, that aren't the educators as well. So I know that came up in our retreat in almost every topic that we had, and it was on our legislative platform. And so I do think that, you know, there's a real call to make sure that what we're teaching the students is something that they're getting throughout, you know, everywhere they go. And so I know we've done that before. I'm hoping we continue to do that with this too.
So I can speak a little bit to that as one of the things. We didn't talk much about this, but we also have some overrepresentation of our exclusionary discipline with our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So one of the steps that we took for that too is we used our district handled title money, and every title school has a full-time family liaison, which is different from before they had to split. So now we have somebody that is going to be there to really help support families and have them be decision makers and be side by side with our students to help both academics and supports. So that was another like nuance from our data that we did.
Patty, how many title schools do we have?
We have 7. Yep, we have one change, but we have
clarification. So when we say incidents, is that one kid doing one thing, or is that 3 kids and that counts as, having an altercation, that counts as one incident?
I will send that to Carrie. So it's an incident, there can be multiple people involved in that incident, but each of them have, you have your offender, your victim, your bystander, your whatever that might be. If there are 2 students that both received a consequence or a meeting a resolution, that is an incident for both of those students, so that would count as 2.
Right, so one event, if you had like 7 people participate in the one event, it would still come up as 7 incidents because you have 7 quote unquote offenders or 7 people involved in that.
And they each could have received something different depending on what they did.
Or they're
in that
involved, right, the
incident.
involvement might have looked different.
Got it. That's helpful, thank you. So I love the idea of the plans and the buildings, working on those. Just a couple of things, like, how often are they reviewed, or will they be reviewed? Or just gonna, create the system and then, well, it's the end of the school year, let's look again. But how does the plan for, really using this as a living information to tailor things as they go throughout the year?
So I can help with that one.
Love that question. Yes.
So at the secondary level, the schools use something that's called the Progress Monitoring Tool. And what they do is they create a major improvement strategy for academics and a major improvement strategy for climate and culture. And so we evaluate what their work is on a 9-week cycle to check in and see how they're making progress on what those goals are. And so those typically get done during the unified improvement time frame, and I don't have it memorized right now.
October
Carrie?
15th.
Thank you. So by October 15th, they will have that finalized for us. So when I think about the plan will be built within their PM tools.
And I'll go a step further. We created early warning systems for each of our middle and high schools. And so weekly, each principal and administrator receives an email for students that would fall into a higher risk, medium risk, and lower risk area. And it isn't just on behavior, it's if you're failing grades, if you are having poor attendance, if you are struggling in a different way. And so each week, the principals get that data sent to them so that they can work with their teams and their classrooms and make sure those plans are being put in place. And so it isn't just an annual review, we're constantly looking at that with our new systems, and principals are receiving like accurate data, live data on a weekly basis to know where we are.
Joe, can you talk about your review process too? Because it's, what is it, a monthly data review or?
With the SRO group, yeah. So so Sergeant Bartnett, Sergeant Kirk and I, we meet once a week and we talk about some various trends and things like that. And then every month we'll go through and we'll look at our criminal citations for students, and we break that down by race, gender, all those other different things to make sure that we're being equitable. But then also too, we go back, and then on the school side, I'm looking through it and I'm going, okay, we have absenteeism, we have grade issues, we have other discipline issues. And then in that partnership, now I've got this information, the SRO kind of steps out, and then I follow up with a safety plan or with the administration to make sure that, okay, something happened here, but what interventions am I now bringing back to the learning services side to make sure that we're running those supports? So we do that monthly.
I would add to it too that we, the beauty of us setting expectations during our continuous improvement team time, that these are district-wide practices, right, that warm welcomes are happening every day, every classroom, every school, means that all of us, teachers visiting other teachers, principals being out of the classrooms, everyone in this room does walkthroughs, right, that we can all be looking for those things and supporting our staff in making sure that it is district-wide. So that's a really awesome benefit to doing something that is a district-wide expectation, is we can all help each other achieve that.
I think the key also is to get the data into the hands of the schools, and under the leadership of both Theo and Sarah, who work with each of our buildings, can really drill down again to help support schools, evaluate needs, look at trends. Obviously we have our student management system, Infinite Campus, and EduClimber have robust reporting mechanisms and tools, and so we're well aware of incidents. We're Some schools may have higher reporting than others, or by grade level, or in different areas, and so that's what typically gets the highest attention.
And what is really exciting about the continuous improvement teams is we have like 4 cohorts. So all the schools are gonna stick together and are divided, and they will convene for half days with their leadership team throughout the year. And part of that is they're looking at their data and team and looking at what is working, what is not. But a lot of it is looking at what is working in your school. Oh my gosh, you have those results, how did you do that? Because we're struggling over here. So we are utilizing the experts in our schools to help each other grow and move forward. And because they're working on the same aim, then they can have those really strong conversations. So the networking is really about rapid improvement. When you do those things and then you build together, you have more likely of rapid improvement across the system. And they're really excited about it. They chose who they're gonna be working with, and it's been great.
I just have one for the police officers. So I was just curious, so I know that as just a police officer in the community and also as an SRO, that over your career and as you've seen, you know, the student population, society change, when you look at the kids, what, and maybe some of it might be anecdotal for you, what do you see, what have you seen where you see some students and you're like, I really hope this student changes course, but I'm not certain if they're going to, or you see students that are on the wrong path, what did you see, like, you know, course correction? Like, what are the things through your eyes have you seen that might benefit us as we're trying to solve this huge problem?
Both as an SRO and an officer of 29 years, when it comes to students, you're just as individuals as the finances that you work involved with. It could be the difference of a teacher sitting a kid down and talking to them to change the direction. It could be our SROs that do different mentoring programs that they do and talking to them. There is, each kid's different. That's why we're great individuals. And each one's got a different thing that sets them in the right path. Some direction will give them more benefit than, unfortunately, more contact with us on the negative side. I don't have a solid answer for you because the variables are just too wide.
I appreciate that. I was just curious what you had to say.
I've got some students that really had a bad start. Most of their school, not on the right side. And I run into them 2 years later in a restaurant. Now they're the manager of the business. In reality, they should have never passed their freshman year because they were doing everything wrong. Something clicked for them.
I think one of the things I'll add in just working in this role and then being previous law enforcement, the biggest thing with youth that I've seen is a meaningful relationship with an adult. And those adults come in so many different varieties and tasks and mentorships, and I think it's just it's working with SROs and safety and security and nothing else guiding that connection, so we can find that purposeful adult and that purposeful meaning and help that student get there, so they are managing that business later on in life and help make that change. So that's one of the most effective things that I've seen.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, this was a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Just one quick thank you. So I just want to confirm with the board, there's one request so far by Stu that when the report is ready, he would like to know the plan at the middle school level. I just want to do a check-in with the board to see, because I know this is a topic of high interest and staff, we want to be responsive. Is there any additional information, report, discussion that staff can do as a result of this presentation? I'm sure you may have more questions and what have you, but since I have you all here, is there anything else that we can just illuminate for staff that we can work on?
You know, I mean, I think that you guys have a lot of things you're working on, and so the updates on those are gonna be really helpful, right? As there's something to talk about in some of those areas. I'm excited to hear how it's going or what doesn't work and what we're doing about that. I think that's a big deal, but I expect we probably are gonna get that.
Check-ins once in a while, letting us know that these are working, so that what we dealt with last year, mid-year, and all the conversation and the challenge we had with the situation, that we're making progress with it, not having to continue being a target on our, as we're sitting up there. So I guess I'd like just some updates.
I'd be curious from Kylie, like something on the professional, probably be under professional development. What are the tools we're providing to the teachers and paraprofessionals in learning how to, like, cause kids' behavior is different than it was when I was in school. How do they de-escalate something that clearly what we've heard and so is escalating to really physical? How do we equip them so that they can de-escalate?
It's really, there's training to really look at the cycle when a student, if something has happened, we want to make sure that we're putting things in place that can kind of get them down. There's also like specific strategies to teach kids on how to regulate, and they even can touch their brainstem and go back to their forehead to say, I'm gonna take a minute, I'm gonna take a breath, and I'm gonna get myself back calmed down, because right now I'm not using my cognitive brain. Those are trauma-informed practices. We will be having a trained restorative solutions person at every school site, and they have the expertise of those big pieces, along with how do we help students regulate, change their behaviors, and then be able to get back in. There are going to be some kids who are going to need more supports. Don't get me wrong. There are going to be kids that might need some time out, some extra social skills, in addition to the ones that we are already providing all students. But that's when our study teams of students really needs to kick in. And we want to get there, so we're really launching that earlier than later, so that we can help and we can support. So the ultimate goal is they're successful in the classroom with their peers, with their learning. So it's like a continuum of those supports going up, and really empowering teachers with some of those skills and with our paraprofessionals. It's a process. It's definitely a process. But we have those things ready to roll, and as we are learning and growing in our continuous improvement teams.
Thank you so much, you guys. We appreciate you sticking around and sharing with us. We have one more agenda item. Am I right?
Yes. Gordon Jones.
Thank you.
So thank you. We appreciate your time. And it says 5 minutes.
Yeah, it says 5 minutes. And we have 3 on the clock.
Okay. So, 5.4, 23-24 audit update. That should be
Oh,
quick.
that's not.
It should be
Oh,
quick.
yeah, it really is quick.
It should be.
It really is.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Please do not challenge Gordon like that.
No, I just did. I threw
He's taking that as a challenge.
I may need to stretch first.
Please don't.
Good evening again, board. At the risk of wearing out my welcome and seeing board members nod off, likely which I've failed on both accounts thus far. A very brief audit update. As the board knows, we've selected new auditors for this year, Plant Moran. While there's been some bumps, they've been good bumps to have. This is a good process for the district and for the taxpayers of the district. It allows me and my team to check our egos and know that we're not perfect, and we are not. Believe it or not, I know as much as I would like to think that's the case. But just a brief overview, we're ahead of schedule in the audit right now from where we've been in the past and the calendar that we've laid out for ourselves for this year. So we're on a good trajectory right now. It didn't start with, the board selected the audit group, the recommended audit group in May. We had conversations with them somewhat informally, somewhat formally in May and June. And then we kicked off, they requested a pre-audit meeting with the board president. So Barb joined that call. We did it virtually. We had that discussion. That's what this document that I'm handing out to each of you now is. They want all of the board to know what that information is, what kind of their expectations are for the audit, what the board's responsibility in this is. So nothing you need to act on or do other than please read the document. This is very similar, if not exact, to the conversation that I sat in on when they had the pre-audit conversation with Barb. Yeah. So again, we are ahead of schedule. They are meeting with various groups. This group is, I'm in the 38th year of my professional career, all in accounting, and have dealt with many audits. The team that we have working for the district on the district's behalf on an independent basis is as good as I've worked with over my career. So I'm very pleased with the decision that was recommended and that the board agreed to. That being said, there are some bumps along the way. One item that I will bring forth tonight for the board's edification, I'll provide an explanation on it. What was I going to say? In 2014, there was legislation that was passed by the Colorado legislature that said school districts and any government entity that participates in PERA has to report in their annual report their proportionate share of what the unfunded liability is within PERA. So PERA operates as a pension, and there's certain benchmarks that they have, industry benchmarks that they have to abide by, that they have to try to meet, looking at the longevity of the program. Keep in mind, a school district like us has no impact, no bearing on the decisions that are made, the investment decisions, the management decisions within PERA. But yet, they wanted each district to record their proportionate share of that liability. It's not the district's liability, not the taxpayer's liability, but is PERA's liability. So with that preface, there's an elaborate calculation that takes place every year. The district, my team, myself, are responsible for the building the financial statements. The one calculation that we rely on our auditors for is providing them all of the PERA data that they need, that we've submitted. The district has met all of our obligations. We've sent in all the withholdings that we need to, all of those things. The one calculation that we have the auditors do is the PERA calculation. So previous auditors have done that through the history of the district. Plant Moran does that audit on a go-forward basis. They have requested work papers from our prior auditor, and they're reviewing those work papers, and just so they have an understanding of processes, procedures, policies, all those things that are in place with the district. In the calculation, it's probably a 10-tab spreadsheet. There's probably 90 calculations on each tab. The Plant Moran has discovered one error in one cell of that calculation.
Tisk.
So just to put that in perspective.
How big is the error?
Oh, yeah, it's not 2 pennies, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Keep in mind, the district has.
Why do you think we had that long runway for this?
districts, we don't even book this entry within our system. We record it in our financial reports.
Because you have to.
But it's a top level
Nancy's getting ready to write the number.
informative decision.
She's ready.
So, the numbers going back to fiscal year 18, this is pensions net of accumulated amortization. I know you've all studied this
Oh, yeah,
very
totally.
closely. Our proportionate share starting in FY 18, fiscal year 18, was 170.6 million, 87.3 million in the next year, 35.5 million, 100.6 million, 88.8 million. So you can see this number goes up and down as the market reacts, where para has their dollars invested. All of these things they're big numbers, and they move up and down with a lot of movement. So the calculation that was reported in our financial reports for last year was 107.5 million. That number with one formula in one cell of a massive spreadsheet should have been 64.3 million. So it's a $43 million difference.
But finish
So
it up.
immediately, this was one
Don't
of
leave them
the,
hanging, Gordon.
immediately when this was brought to my attention, was on a Friday afternoon.
I got a phone call.
Resulted in a sleepless weekend as I fired off emails over the weekend. What does this mean? What do we have to do? Speaking with our municipal advisor, with legal, with the audit company, Plant Moran, and the answer is nothing. We don't have to restate, we don't have to republish our results. Plant Moran will make the correction and note it in our 23-24 audit report that it is a restatement of the prior period beginning balance. We've reviewed the calculation already with them for 23-24, and we know what those numbers are. So it will be noted as a finding in the results, in the audit report.
So Gordon, it's not an error?
It is an
Yes,
error.
yeah.
It is an error.
But
Yes.
not
A
against us.
$43 million error,
That doesn't mean anything.
but
No,
it doesn't mean anything.
That's exactly.
I mean, what are we gonna do,
I'm a
write a
little
check
lost.
to Para and then have the state of Colorado write a check back to us? I mean, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
It's silly.
It's an entry we don't even book in our records, but we reflect in our annual report, as does all of the other 177 school districts in the state. They take their proportionate share of the unfunded liability of the pension plan. So we will absolutely, we will have it corrected for next year. It will be a finding that is noted. Because of the size, so the ramifications of this, because of the size of the error, it indicates from in audit language, material internal control error. So that puts us at a higher, it puts us again at a higher risk level from an audit perspective. The only thing that does is on our single audit, which is our federal programs, they have to audit a higher percentage of our balances there. Rather than 20%, now they have to do 40%. So that is unfortunately, one of the first findings, the first finding that they had, and it gave me pause, shall we say. But again, with consulting with numerous agencies, nothing we need to do. It will be in their audit report, and they will discuss that more when they will present to the board when we wrap up our audit in November.
I should have recorded the phone call on Friday
I
when
bet it
Gordon
was
told me
worth it.
initially. It was rather interesting.
First, I told him what the issue was, and then if he wanted my resignation.
Yeah.
What did you say, Dr. Schaefer?
I said, Gordon?
Take a deep breath.
So I will be back in front of the board if there's, as we progress, but likely
He's
once
still
the final
employed.
product is ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I
Thank you.
ask
Yes,
a
question?
question about, related to this, as far as the audit advisory committee? as I recall, we each appointed somebody that was meant to be for a 2-year term, and it has been more than 2 years.
Thank you for bringing, sorry, if you have, that is your question?
Well, that's not a question, but you get the gist of my,
Yes.
what would be a question?
We have, members that have not attended regularly. So that would be something that I would ask of the board is to, propose your, we did it by each board member proposed their one person. I would encourage you, if we could do that over the next 2 months before the report is ready, and then that group would hear the presentation from the auditors once it's ready.
Gordon, will you send us an email lining out exactly what the expectation is?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly.
And Denise will need to appoint someone for sure.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah, because we did it like in spring-ish of 2022.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
we need to re-up that membership.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, and
I'm
I'm sorry.
gonna adjourn the meeting.